basement housing.
So as a project, we have had to go through compensating project-affected households with the houses or land as the need could be. I can tell you we have had to construct 177 houses with the different roomage depending on the conditions of the houses, how they were before, and we are confident that they're in a much better condition than where they were before.
As a projects and construction engineer in charge of replacement houses, some of the first activities were informing the PAPs. We had to move to each of the PAPs, the physically displaced persons, to each of them and inform them of their alternative choices. Because if your house has been affected and it needs to be demolished, they had a choice of either to choose a replacement house, that is in-kind compensation, or a cash compensation. For a cash compensation, we would value the affected house, and that is the amount of money that would be paid to them. But for in-kind compensation, we had them in categories, depending on the size of your existing house.
My personal experience working on the replacement housing has been a bit of a broader aspect in terms of the fact as an engineer, you're primarily dealing with construction and the engineering aspects, but the project has been more of a social enterprise, social engagement with the PAP, bringing a product which is innovative and able to transform lives, but also to be accepted in that the product, which is the house, has to be owned by the PAP right from the inception stage, which is in the engagement. You have to engage the PAP to know that the house is theirs, and also in the construction, they have to know that the house being constructed by ECO is the PAP's house.
Now, the process of selection of contractors for the houses, we had to go through a very meticulous process, ensuring that we select the best companies, and all the companies we selected, we used 4 companies and they are all local companies. And that is very, very important that they understand the local construction environment, the building materials. All these materials were sourced locally, the labor was all local, and even when we needed unskilled labor, we had to hire them from the locations where the houses were being built.
The success of any construction project depends on the expertise and efficiency of the contractors involved.
We got the lot 3 for Mubende district, and we are doing 58 houses. We did it in 2 different batches. Batch 1 had a total of 29 houses, and batch 2 also 29 houses. So we started in July 2022, though we got affected by Ebola for 3 months, September up to December. Then we resumed in December. When doing the foundation, one of the things we had to do was make sure we barricade or we fence off the areas of work to avoid any unnecessary movements within the site. You know, when you're building in a village, everyone wants to see what's going on. And in case they enter and there are open excavations, there are open trenches and all that, you get accidents, you get incidents, and as per eco policy, zero harm. That is what we are focusing on.
The housing construction process showcased the dedication and expertise of the contractors involved. From laying the foundation to erecting the structures, every step was meticulously planned and executed to ensure the highest quality standards, including seismic specifications. Environmental stewardship and safety were integral to the housing construction process. The ECOP Environment team explained the environmental aspects considered, ensuring minimal impact on the surrounding ecosystems.
We had to ensure that contractors submit the environmental management plans to show us how they're going to carry out all the different activities in an environmentally friendly way. The houses are designed with a rainwater harvesting system. They have solar system, and the kitchen has an improved cook stove with a chimney that reduces indoor pollution and also reduces on the need for fuel or firewood, in that case, or biomass. and that contributes to reduction in the cutting down of trees since they use less biomass in cooking.
Additionally, the Health, Safety and Environment team ensured that all relevant HSE standards were followed rigorously.
At ECOP, safety is one of our core values, so we made sure that the contractors that were selected to construct the replacement houses understood the safety risks involved in the assignment and the safety challenges, and that they were able to plan for them appropriately before starting the construction. Then during the actual execution, the actual construction of the houses, we made sure that we conducted audits and inspections just to make sure that the contractors were indeed operating safely. And whenever we identified improvement opportunities or some gaps, we communicated to the contractors so that they would be able to continuously improve, and we avoid any undesired occurrences or events from happening. So all things from excavations to working at heights to land transportation, because they had to do a lot of driving in the communities, we made sure that they understood those safety risks and that they had planned appropriately to minimize the associated risk levels to as low as reasonably possible. So there are several tools that we'll use in the field, from reporting of observations, we have observation booklets, to the stop work authorization that everyone gets from our managing director, to the life-saving rules that guide us through the different activities that we have undertaken in the field. These are some of the basic tools that guided us to make sure that we indeed consistently execute the task safely.
In ensuring that human rights were observed while constructing the replacement houses, consultations were done with all the PAPs, project affected persons, in choosing the location for where the houses were to be replaced. They were also never left homeless. They stayed in their former houses until the replacement houses were ready. They were given better houses than they had before, safer and better houses. We see that there are water harvest tanks in the new replacement houses, which creates a better livelihood especially for the women who usually do the domestic work. They no longer have to move far distance to fetch water, as they already have now water harvest tanks in their homes, in the new homes.
East African Crude Oil Pipeline, we have been working with them for some good time. We have worked with them in different fields where we started with the identification, we started some engagement meetings, they have done some evaluation, they have reached the compensation level. But to me, a compensation level has been in many ways, because I hear and I've been observing that there are some that have been getting compensation in terms of cash, and we have some that have been getting compensation in terms of buildings, where they have been building good houses for them. And at the office of the RDC, one of our roles and responsibilities, monitoring the implementation and the projects within the government, both for NG and the government. And we have been monitoring them, moving to different places where they are doing that work of construction. And we have not found any difficulty, because we have been moving there and people have been appreciating.
We're comfortable and we know that this being a big project, environment wouldn't be compromised. It will be one of the priorities and the social factors. And indeed, so far what I've seen, it has really taken care of those, especially the social. I've seen the people really being taken care of. Houses have been built. Mubende has the longest stretch of the pipeline. And for that reason, I think we have the highest number of the project affected persons.
I hope that the world is watching what is taking place in Nkoma village, in Luengo district, in one country called Uganda, gifted by nature. That we are being appreciated for keeping our word as government, for keeping our word as an ECOP company. That we promised to safeguard the environment. That we promised to treat the project affected people in a human manner. And we are doing it. We are transforming people's lives. This is indeed the socio-economic transformation agenda.
My name is Catering Oliver. I've been studying at St. Simon Vocational Training Center, doing a course of welding and metal fabrication.
Catering Oliver is among the 168 beneficiaries from the households affected by the project.
During our training, we did the exams, the assessment for Directorate Industrial Training. I passed very well. Here is my certificate.
Sponsored by ECOP, she successfully completed a 3-month vocational training program in metal fabrication at the St. Simon Peter Vocational Training.
I'm very happy that I've graduated, and I thank God for having kept me alive. I want to look for a workshop. I'll be working from there. I look for money to buy other machines so that I can make my own workshop. I want to thank my parents, ECOP, Montrose, and the staff of St. Simon Vocational Training Center who have supported us during our studies. May the Lord bless you abundantly.
The ECOP is a 1,143-kilometer crude oil export pipeline that will transport Uganda's crude oil from Kampala, Hoima in Uganda to the Chongoleani Peninsula near Tanga Port in Tanzania. The pipeline will be buried to minimize impact on the environment, with some facilities above the ground designed to ensure minimal environmental and social impact. The project will be compliant with Ugandan and Tanzanian national legislations and international requirements.
So ECOP itself is a 24-inch buried pipeline, and around that 24 inches of steel there's some insulation, a little bit like on a thermos flask. That insulation has two purposes. It keeps the fluid inside the pipeline warm, and it stops that heat being transmitted to the environment outside.
The survey crew carefully surveys and stakes the right-of-way. Topsoil is stockpiled.
The aim of doing this workshop today was to raise the awareness of subcontractors and vendors of local companies in Tanzania.
We've explained what the project consists of, and this afternoon we've had 4 of our level 1 contractors who are international contractors, but who they themselves also need goods and services provided locally. So we've brought all of that together, and I hope in one day we've given a good oversight, a good overview of what it is that the project can bring and the many opportunities and benefits that we hope will flow into the business community and into the wider community in Tanzania thereafter. We started the journey in April 2016, and at least we inside ECOP have been, together with many other stakeholders, have been working on developing the project to where it is today. And it's taken a lot of, I always say, like preparation, negotiation. The word I like very much is persistence.
Tanzania ina asilimia 15 kupitia TPDC, kwa hiyo sisi ni shareholders, lakini wabia wengine ni pamoja na Sinok, kampuni ya UNOC ya Uganda, pamoja na kampuni ya Total ambao wako hapa.
The purpose of the ECOP project is to export the crude oil from Tilenga and Kingfisher fields to the Tanga port in Tanzania. The ECOP facility starts at Kabale Hub in Uganda until Tanga in Tanzania through a 1,443 long kilometer.
Kwa kawaida mradi kama huu zabuni zinafunguliwa kwa dunia nzima.
My name is Natasha Kasami. I'm the National Content Capacity Building Lead for ECOP. And some of you will have seen my name in the email sent to you. If I forgot to respond, apologies. But you're all very welcome. Thank you for responding and thank you for coming. Before we start, we'll start off with a prayer, and then which I will lead. And then we'll invite Sheraton to do a safety moment. We'll also have a safety moment from one of our colleagues, and then from there, we'll let you know the reason you're here and go straight into it with CPP. So let's pray. Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day. We thank you for the gift of life, Father. We thank you for bringing us here, Father. We know, Father, that there is benefit in being here. There's purpose in being here, Father. We pray over every institution represented here, Father, that you may cause them to flourish for the glory of your kingdom. And may the deliberations here bring you glory and bring our country glory as well. In Jesus' name, amen. So Sheraton is going to give us a brief safety moment, and then we'll be back.
Good morning. Today we are in a safe environment. We don't have any fire drill. But in case you hear of it, please take it serious. Our PA system will be alerting you on that in case you hear of any fire alarm. In case you find any abandoned bag, please don't panic. We have a canine at our main gate, which will come in and please do the sweep. In the case of place of convenience, it is just opposite. You come out of this tent, it is just opposite. In the case of any fire alarm, our assembly ground, please, it is at the main gate in the gardens. Always you will be checking there once you are passing, though there is no fire, and you get to know the place. In case you want to smoke a bit, please don't smoke within. We have our speak tents. Go into the speak, get out of the lobby entrance, then you slope down there. We have our beautiful tents. Please, you'll be seeing them, you settle down and you smoke a bit. You are in the safe environment. In case you feel you are not okay, we have our nurse from Case Clinic will come in for the assistance. Thank you very much.
So for those of you who are attending one of these forums for the first time, ECOP is very keen on health and safety. And so we always, and with the oil and gas sector as well, we always effort to start our sessions with a safety moment to make you aware of your surroundings, but also to sensitize you to certain issues that are pertinent in health and safety in the country. My colleague is not here yet, so we're going to get straight into it. This is the Catering and Camp Management Supplier Development Forum for ECOP. In case you're not sure where you are, in case you've entered the wrong room, that's what we're going to be discussing here. The purpose of this forum is to elaborate more on the scope of services that are required under the catering and camp maintenance contracts that will be run by our Tier 1 contractor, CPP. So, as you will see, as we deliberate, there's a lot of responsibility that will be expected of the contractors that take on these two contracts. And so, please do take notes. I know it might seem unnecessary, but it will be beneficial for you, because when they release the EOI, you're the ones who have the first-hand information of what exactly it is they're looking for. So, do take notes, write down the scope of services. It's not just catering as it sounds, there's a lot more to it. The person who takes on our catering contract will also be heavily required to promote community content. So national content doesn't stop here. It doesn't stop with just getting a Ugandan firm to execute these, or a Ugandan company to execute these contracts. We'll also expect you to go down to the grassroots and implement community content, engage the local communities so they can also benefit from the scopes of work that CPP is availing, but they'll talk more about that. So yeah, sit tight, enjoy, ask as many questions. We're here for you. And in the spirit of catering, today we'll be providing lunch, so do stick around, have some lunch, and engage the CPP team. With that said, I'm going to invite Ivan Namanya to give us a brief safety moment. And then that will be followed by remarks from our National Content Manager, Marianne Habwe.
Hello, good morning, everyone. Today's safety moment is, as we head into the festive seasons, we need to ensure that we are safe on the road. And the safety moment today, I didn't prepare a slide, but I will just talk about it. It's road signs. So most of us Ugandans, there's a common proverb that if you want to hide something from a Ugandan, put it in a book. So if you want to hide certain information from people, put it up. They will not bother looking at it. But road signs are very important. You need to know the speed limits, especially if you're going up country. Ensure you're adhering to the speed limit. The Uganda national speed limit is 100 in certain places and 80 everywhere else. If the signpost says 50, please adhere to the 50. If you don't, a traffic officer across the town will get you, and you'll be in trouble. Also, a lot of roadworks are happening. A lot of roads are being demarcated for works around this season. Please bear with the National Road Network and the authorities, but also adhere to their signs and ensure that you are safe as you drive wherever you're going. And maybe just a quick reminder, in case you forget, check water, check oil, check your wipers, check your tires, ensure they are ready for the road. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ivan. You forgot to mention not to drink and drive. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning. I hope you got yourselves a cup of tea, a coffee. We need to make this session very interactive and very, very beneficial to all of us. So, as being introduced by Natasha, my name is Marianne Habwe, and I'm the National Content Manager for ECOP in Uganda. We are so pleased and delighted to have you here today. And the reason we are here is to make sure that you have the information that you need. We have a responsibility as ECOP project to make sure that we engage with as many local companies as possible so that every opportunity that comes, you are the first beneficiaries. And information is power. Once you get the information, then you know what to expect and how to execute. Before I go very far, I would like to introduce the team that works for ECOP that is here. I'd like to recognize Mr. David Bishop right there at the back. Yes. David works with the national content and local content team. That's for both Uganda and Tanzania. And he works as the national content manager for Wally in Uganda. Good to have you here, David, as always. I'd also like to recognize Natasha, Ivan. We have the team from the comms department, Hilda, right at the back, Jacob Olanye, who's supporting this forum, and also the team from Wally, Israel, and the rest. We are happy that you're here. Yeah, I just wanted to give a brief of where we are. When we hear of the Eco project, most people may think it's still far-fetched, but it's already here, and works have already started going on. As I speak, the pipes have already arrived in Tanzania, and it's a very big milestone for the project. I mean, there's no ECOP without the pipes coming all the way from China. So the first 100-kilometer pipes are already in East Africa, and that makes us excited to know that we are ready to start. Next year is going to be a very busy year, and a call to all of us who are here to get to know, get interested in the project, get interested in the literature that is out there, get on our websites, read and understand, and know which opportunities there are that you can engage in. The opportunities are not only restricted to provision of goods and services. I know we are companies, but we have employment opportunities coming up. We have internship opportunities. We have quite a number of opportunities that come as a result of this project. So as you can see displayed there, this is what is happening currently in country. There are some civil works that have already started. When you look at the MCPYs, don't get surprised. You get to learn the jargon as you move around. That is the main camp and pipe yards that are being set up. And that's where the camps that we're going to learn about today are going to be set. So the civil works already started in this country. Looking in Q1, we know that after this phase, most of it is almost completed. The next phase is installation of the camps and then the operationalization of the camps. So I invite you to be keen and attentive during this session as we have our main contractors who are CPP. I'd like to introduce them to you as well. CPP team, you can stand up for recognition. Yeah, so that's that team, or that's the company represented here that is going to be laying down the pipes all the way from Hoima all to Tanga in Tanzania. And they've got a lot of opportunities for us. Let's be keen, let's take note of any question you'd like to have in regard to this subject. It's very interesting, it's very involving, and it's an opportunity for us to know and grab the opportunities. So I don't want to take really much of the time. My role here was to just give remarks and open the session. So have a good time while here and enjoy every moment. We shall be around with you in case you need to have any clarifications made. We are here to support, we are here to give information, we are here to guide, and we delight, us as ECOP and the National Content Team, we are delighted to know that most of the people in this room will benefit from this project. I thank you.
Okay, thank you. Good morning, everybody, and thank you for coming for this forum. My name is Mattia. I'm working with CPP, the contractor for the construction of the oil pipeline in Uganda and Tanzania. And I will just give a brief overview of the project. In total, we are about 4 main contractors for ECOP to execute this project. We have World Europe, which is the EPSMC contractor. We have Borle, the main logistics contractor. And we have Schneider and Snef, the EITS, electricals, instrumentation, and telecommunications scope, plus CPP, who is the main contractor for the construction of the pipeline. So like Marian has shared, CPP is going to be in charge of the construction of the project. But specifically today, our forum is dedicated to catering and camp management. So we'll be focusing on that, and I hope our audience is also a dedicated audience with interest in catering and the camp management services, and there are many contracts that will be coming our way. So like you can see, our presentation is divided into catering. I propose after I've done the catering presentation, we will take in some questions on catering, then I will handle camp management, and we shall wind up. That is a brief overview of the wider project, which is stretching 1,443 kilometers, plus the 96 kilometers of the Tilenga feeder line, converging in Kabalega Industrial Park in Hoima, that CPP is going to undertake. In total, the whole project is having 18 camps. But for our interest in this forum, we shall be focusing on the Ugandan side, which is a total of 392 kilometers from Tilenga to Mutukula border. In there, we are going to have a total of 6 camps, with 4 on the Tilenga feed, with 2 on the Tilenga feeder in Boma, and at PS1 in Kabalega Industrial Park. And the main export crude oil pipeline will have about 4 camps spread within the 10 districts that the ECOP line traverses. But we shall be having one in Kakumiro at a place called Kasambia. Then we shall have one in Mubende at Lungala, one in Sembabule and the Chotera districts. So our interest here is the 6 MCPYs, which are located in Uganda. The other ones are in Tanzania. And yeah, you can also go to Tanzania, build the synergy, and see how you grab part of those opportunities through collaboration with the Tanzanian companies. The purpose of today's conference is to ensure that you are given every information you need to be able to participate fully and in a responsive manner, so that you are not disadvantaged at any time. We are well aware that the issue of national content is rooted in the National Oil and Gas Policy of 2008, specifically Goal 7, which is to do with national participation. Actually, it is only in oil and gas that such conferences happen, where all information is released to people, so that you are able to participate responsively when we roll out these opportunities. So we want to make sure you are familiar with the standards required of oil and gas. We know this is a new industry, and we don't want to leave any stone unturned, and we don't want to disadvantage any Ugandan entity, any Ugandan business person, because we want you to come along with us in line with the National Oil and Gas Policy of 2008 through national participation. So there are some of the things that we want you to be familiar with. We are looking at best international practices. We are looking at understanding the requirements to be met and responsibilities in terms of IFC standards, risk assessment requirements, including the basics of hazardous analysis, critical control points, principles. These are very critical in the food supply chain. Employee welfare, drug and alcohol policy, requirements for food and water, what for fitness for work looks like, and many other things. So all this information is going to be shared. Even if you don't get everything in this conference, please feel free to reach out to us anytime. Feel free to reach out to ECOP. ECOP will make us aware of what is being inquired about anything, and we shall respond to your inquiries anytime. Yeah, this slide expounds further on the locations of the camps and their capacities. How many people are going to be accommodated in every camp, and when are they commencing to operate, and when are they expected to close operations. We have a total of 6 camps, like I said earlier. One in Boma at Butiaba. It is going to be accommodating about 336 people. So 336 people times 3 a day, that is over 1,000 meals per day in one camp. We have one in Buga here at Hoima PS1. 301 people are expected to be accommodated. And this is the one which is likely to kick off operation. You can see its date is 27th April 2024. So we have about only 4 months for operation to commence there. We have Kakumiro, Kasambia, 351 people. Mubende, 434. Sembabule, that is going to be the biggest, 478. And Kakuto, about 300 people. All of these people are waiting to be served by you, the Ugandan entities, well aware that catering is a reserved contract for you to provide the services. How are the camps going to look alike? This is a layout of how our camps are going to be. We have many facilities in there: accommodation, rooms, offices, workshops. We have powerhouse areas, water supply and sewage treatment areas. We have areas for recreation, like gymnasium, a football pitch, basketball pitch. Within the camps, we shall also have a pipe yard and also parking area. So this is how the 6 camps are going to look like in those 6 areas that have been earmarked. This is the kitchen and the area where we shall be having our food. What I didn't mention earlier is that we are going to be having a cross-cultural team executing this project. We have Chinese, we have Ugandans, we have expatriates from across the globe, from Malaysia, from Pakistan, from Syria, from Europe. So we intend to have 3 kitchens in our camps. We shall have one dedicated to Chinese cuisines, our local dishes, and also continental dishes. And people will have the liberty to serve from where they feel comfortable, but we want to take into consideration people's tastes and preferences. And in all our camps, we shall be at liberty to serve wherever we feel comfortable. So in this layout, we have the storage for the food, we have the processing area for the food, and also the dining areas. Yeah, like I said earlier, we shall have 3 categories of dishes served. Local kitchen, here we prefer a catering service supplier. The same for the continental cuisines. But we will prefer suppliers for the Chinese kitchen. And there will be a lot of items to be supplied, and also some chefs and helpers to support. Here are some of the services that will be required under catering still, and they are earmarked for both community and national content. For those items that we think we can find in the community, and this is what we also want to ask our subcontractors that will come on board to take into consideration, we want to buy them from the community, such that at the end of the day, the local people also feel the impact of the project through transformation, income generation, and job creation for the common person on the ground. But where we don't find services or supplies from within the community, then we have a leeway after proof that such items are not available or an effort has been made and we can't find them, then we shall be free to source nationally from within the country. So here we have catering services. I don't know in the house if we have any catering company from Hoima, but nevertheless, we shall also be doing regional forums in the area that is affected by the project so that we don't exclude anybody and the inclusion is taken care of. Supply for kitchen utensils, this EOI run in the papers and is closed. I'm sure some of you could have participated through the expressions of interest for the same. But procurement of ingredients, then we have chefs and kitchen helpers plus packaging materials. Those ones are still open and they are to be published in the first quarter of 2024. MACU, we said some camps are starting to operate around 27th April 2024. So these EOIs must be running very immediately at the beginning of the new year, and you can imagine the procurement process is going to be expedited. It is not going to drag on because we have deadlines to meet. So amongst the things that we need you to provide, which you may not provide, but you may need also to cascade down to tier 3 contractors are the supplies of the items you need. Because we don't expect you to provide the catering service and also doing all the procurement of the items you require. So at this stage, as we do the regional forums, we expect that we could actually conduct these regional forums with our preferred subcontractors for catering. And then we will go with you up country to do a supply chain mapping, market surveys, such that you are able to identify some of the suppliers for these inputs we shall need. Things like beef, chicken, etc., vegetables, fruits are going to be required in big volumes. This slide will show you the quantities expected of every item. And you can see it is in tons. Where you see many items in one area, the quantity in terms of kilograms you see on the right is what is required of every item. So when you talk about vegetables, we have a combined demand of about over 1 ton for every type of vegetable per month. for the length of operation that we are going to be in the field. The same for all other items. You can see drinking water, we shall require about 22,000 liters per month. We have fish, we have meat, and all other products. These slides I think will be shared, and then it will be more meaningful when you go through them critical stage by stage. Yeah, so our suppliers, we expect you to take into consideration provisions of meals that meet those requirements on the slide, like carbohydrates, protein, fats, vitamins, minerals. We expect balanced diet, portion control, hydration, limit processed foods, and individual needs. Then those are public holidays that are recognized, where we may not have to work on such days, and we shall be staying in our camps. And these are just a guide for the International Petroleum Industry Environmental Conservation Association that we expect you to follow as far as food standards and safety for our staff is concerned. Yeah, I think that was it briefly about catering. This is camp management. I would prefer we break it off here, take questions on catering, then we'll handle camp management and what we expect you to find in terms of opportunities. Maybe we'll have a microphone running around in the audience and we take questions. There is a hand over there.
So just to provide an overview, Mattia has talked about the catering. There's 6 camps with 3 kitchens each. And the catering contractor, if you go back to slide 9, is expected to provide the following services that are listed on slide 9. So there is a need to provide catering that is hygienic and that meets the standards that Mattia later talked about, both the national standards and international standards. There's a need for the caterer to procure ingredients, and this needs to consider community content, which means that there's farmers at the grassroots levels who should benefit from this project. And so the catering contractor in each of the 6 camp areas will need to try as much as possible to source ingredients from the community where available, and then if not available, source on a national level. There's also need for the catering contractor to provide their own chefs and helpers, kitchen helpers, and these chefs and kitchen helpers need to be trained to a standard that is London requirements and international standards. And some of the meals, Mattia might have touched on this, some of the meals like lunch will be provided on site. So the contractors will be working on site trying to complete the pipeline, and it will be difficult for them to travel from their site to their camps and back. So the catering contractor will then also be required to provide meals like lunch, package it, label it so that it's clear what allergens are in the food, and distribute it to the sites where the meals will be provided. So as you can see, it's quite a rich scope. 6 camps, 3 kitchens, and then there's all these requirements expected of the contractor. And so my key takeaway from this is collaboration is key. I see very many companies here that do various things, and in my opinion, I don't think you can do it alone. The objective for CPP is to get a minimum of 3 contractors to handle the catering scope, but even those 3 contractors have a lot to do. So it's important that we take all this into consideration and use the time here also to network and ask questions so that when you make a proposal to CPP, it's a very rich one. Do you want to answer as we go?
We can take like 3 and we answer.
Okay.
Thank you, Matia, for the good presentation. My name is Martin Owori from Hoima Resort Hotel. We have participated in the past during the drilling by Halliburton, and we provided meals for the camps. So we have some experience there, and also we have been providing meals to CNOC. In most cases, you demand of the highest standards like you are presented. However, when it comes to pricing, you propose lowest price. Now, these two don't go together. You want me to give you the highest quality at the lowest price. So I think this is some area also in the presentations we should also consider pricing so that you give us the quality, this price, this quality, that price, so that we have categories and levels. Having said that, would wish to participate, but usually you find our capacity, ours upcountry there or at that level. Somehow we are viewed, I think, early enough that we don't have capacities. I don't know why. So eventually you are phased out or you are put under another company. So we are more interested in quality standards and pricing at the same level. Thank you.
Thank you. Any more? There's one here.
Hello, thank you for your presentation, Matai. My question was related to the supply chain and services procured, not necessarily at the sites, but as far as Kampala or different areas, and wondering whether this is something that has been thought of when you're looking at companies in Kampala especially, and when you're looking at the kind of numbers that we are talking about, my colleague here and I were just saying this is about 6,000 meals per day when you look at all six camps. And then also, you know, supplying finished good products and to be able to get the standard that you need. Is this something that you're thinking about, having part of your supply chain coming from the main city and then the efficient routes to reach those camps? I think now we're looking at transport by air. Road might not necessarily be the most efficient when you're especially looking at cold food products, or the most, the cheapest way of, you know, transporting goods. So yeah, I hope my question has been described best in what I've said. I hope you've got my question. Are you looking at basically suppliers that can come from the city, and maybe each day, each week, we're looking at having efficient routes made for us or for the potentials?
Thank you for the questions. I see David Bishop is itching. You want to say something?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, just a couple of things. I think it's important to understand the role of the EOI process, the expression of interest, where CPP will be telling you what they want in terms of standards, how much they want, and not in great detail, because the real detail will come out in the call for tender process. But what the EOI process tells CPP is who is in the marketplace and who is interested and who has the standards and capability and the desire to be involved. When they start to get call for tender information in, they will be able to start answering the sort of questions that you've asked now, which is who is available, what is their capacity, what is their ability to supply, to what standard, where are they, how do we fit all this together into this 6-camp scenario, which is complex. And then you add the logistics into that of getting good quality produce from the right place to the right place. It's complex. So there are many questions that you've asked that CPP have asked themselves, but until they start going through the tendering process, they will not be able to answer them fully. They will design as they go to get it right. Now, as far as using stuff from the cities, etc., CPP will look at everywhere. They have to. You've seen the scale of this. They have to look at everyone. And they are required by ECOP to look at everyone. But one of their main priorities will be to optimize their community content in terms of the provision of fruits, vegetables, meats, dairy produce, etc. So they can't answer every question at the moment because they just don't have enough information. It is the tendering process that will do it. As far as prices and standards are concerned, that is the tendering process. You are given a specification of what is required. You have to price to that so that you make a profit. And then they may turn around and say you're too expensive, and then it becomes a bit of a compromise and a tweaking. But they're not going to tell you we want that for that price. That is not going to happen. They are a business. They will be looking for the best value they can get at the best price they can get. It's up to you to work out your price. And that's the same for everyone. That's why it's a level playing field. I hope that's answered some questions for you.
Thank you, David Bishop. And I would just like to compliment in regards to Angela's question. Her issue was about capacity to handle the big orders. You already see the efforts that have been made to debulk these contracts. We have had 6 camps, And currently the plan is to have at least 3 contractors. That means 2 camps under 1 contractor. At least that is already an effort that has been made to the bulk. Otherwise, this would all be going to one party. They are big companies, but we are cognizant of the fact that we don't have capacity in Uganda to handle maybe this demand. Remember, it's not only ECOP, but we also have the upstream. We have Tulenga, we have Kingfisher, and there are other contractors under Tulenga. We have SLB, you have McDonald and Sinopec, you have CCGV in Kingfisher, you have a lot. So debulking is one of our ways. And yes, we can take concern of your issue, but at the end of the day, it also becomes problematic. As a contractor, you don't have to do a lot of micromanagement. You don't have to be having so many faces you're managing. But as Ugandans, I think we need to learn to work together. When we work together, we work as one person, you deliver together, and you achieve together. Because if a camp is having about 400 people, and maybe you can only do breakfast, that means there must be another person for lunch, then there's going to be another person for dinner. It becomes a little bit problematic. Let us harness collaboration as we also look into your concerns. About quality and price, Mr. Martin, Hoima Resort, the law allows every individual to contract the way they wish. If you know what you are delivering, you must know how much it costs. You are not going to price a glass of wine for a glass of water. So I think this all goes through the contracting process, through negotiations. Please, if what you are delivering is worth it, it can't go for less, just like David Bishop has shared. Supply chain issues, suppliers in the city, yes. Our strategy is national and community participation. What is not available in the community, what is less the standard in the community will not be bought for the sake that it is community content. At least we will not compromise on the quality. You know what one incident of food poisoning can cause in a camp. You may have a 3-week shutdown, and that is all a cost on the contractor. So we must be keen, and we must be hopeful that everybody is going to participate and nobody is going to be excluded. Natasha, are there more questions on catering or proceed to camp management?
Yeah, I'm Titus Mazima, Beautiful Engineering and Equipment Limited. You have answered part of my question. When I look at collaboration that you are talking about, it doesn't bring out clear meaning. You mean you are still encouraging joint venture in this process? To me, to my understanding, I thought such a project should be more favored to Ugandans compared to the rest of the projects. At least I expected breakdown in this project that at least smaller scale companies can take advantage of. Yeah, to my side, when I still see encouragement of joint venture, to me as a Ugandan, I'm touched more. Thank you. I submit.
Thank you. Maybe I can address that question quickly. So as Mattia had alluded to, the catering scope is a reserved contract. And that means that it is reserved for Ugandan companies. Ugandan companies are defined by PAU. We have a representative by PAU who will elaborate more on that. But first of all, to participate in the oil and gas sector, you have to be registered on the NSD. And then when you go into the NSD, PAU further classifies companies as Ugandan, non-Ugandan, and in some cases you'll see pending classification. And in those cases, you need to really chase up with PAU so that they can classify you as either a Ugandan or a non-Ugandan company. When he talks of collaboration, he's not talking necessarily of forming a joint venture with an international company, although that's welcome, but he's talking about forming collaborations, with the companies represented here and beyond. Just forming partnerships where you know that I'm going to deal with the catering scope, but you deal with packaging and distribution. That's what he's referring to. Thank you. Okay. There's a question at the front.
Good morning. My name is Badru. Clarity, Matia. According to the categories and scope of work, when we talk about the procurement of ingredients and catering services, chefs and kitchen helpers, are we saying that all these are going to be different contractors? Then, if they are going to be different contractors, then someone who is going to do the catering itself will just wait for the food to be brought, then the chefs to be hired, and the packaging to be done, and the only person will be just doing the cooking. That is what we need. And if they are going to be split to different contractors, that means the CPP is the one that is going to be charged of controlling the whole food chain. That's my question.
Maybe we'll end with that question on catering, and we respond and then proceed to camp management.
Thank you. My name is Moses with Kembabazi. We currently do about 2,000 meals a day, and you had touched on different cuisines: Chinese, expat, and traditional Ugandan. Most of my cuisine predominantly is the traditional Ugandan cuisine. What percentage or what is the volume in terms of the Chinese cuisine and the expat cuisine?
Good morning. I'm Saba. I'm inspector of hygienic and food safety, and I want to know who makes this category all, and who decide the meat, who decide the quantity, who decide to present this all things. My English, sorry. It's very difficult to decide one company to do all these things. As an inspector of hygienic and quality service and safety, I have some question is not clear for me. Hai capito, Digli? Can you translate? Digli.
You said right. They have understood.
Understand? You understand my question? Diglielo. Qual è la qualità?
Non ho capito.
May you just repeat, please? Thank you.
Okay. I come from Italy. I'm inspector of hygienic and quality service and safety and in food and public service. My question is, who decides the quantity of the food, the quality of the food, and because I saw in the page you make 300 gram or what, something like that, yeah, and 0.1 kilogram for person. I don't know. And then I want to understand who makes this quantity standard. Because in Uganda, I've been here up and down, the quality, it is very less. And then you are not in the standards. How you want the standard in one camp is very difficult to do for 6,000? Yeah, for 6,000 meals. That is my question. You understand? Okay. Thank you. Sorry.
So did you get that? Yeah.
Thank you. I want to decide to start with Dennis. Is it Dennis? Moses. Kembabas. If I got you right, you wanted to know the difference between the Chinese and the continental. Okay. For the volumes, which is going to be split according to different dishes, I suggest we get to it after this conference. I don't have it off head. I'll give misleading information. On the issue of quality and quantity, the quantity is per our experience on previous projects because we have done the same all over the world. And on the issue of quality, in this very session, we have a session on quality by UNBS. I think the issue of quality is going to be handled more in detail by the UNBS, but also taking into consideration the oil and gas standards that I shared earlier on. Then on the issue of Badiru, Mr. Badiru, clarification on who is going to do what. Does the catering company going to issue out these EOIs? Is CPP going to run this EOI independently? And the catering company will only be in charge of preparing the food. As it stands now, that is our plan. And we intend to, like, for example, chefs and kitchen helpers, this will be under an HR company. Will be responsible for recruitment, training, and then they deploy. But even the catering company will have its own staff, its own core staff. We may not recruit for you, everybody. So like David Bishop said, when the EOIs comes out, it will be a little bit brief, but most of the things are going to be in the CFT documents concerning all these contracts. So once the EOI runs in the papers, please let us get on board. Then we get along as we move all together. But some people are going to be recruited by CPP, but as a catering company, we also have your own core staff.
So maybe I can add to that. So let me add to that what Mattia has just said. So the catering service, the catering personnel will be under the catering contractor because you'll be expected to bring your own chefs to cook the food, right? And the catering contractor will also be expected to procure the food that will be used in the camps, right? So the catering contractor will be responsible for procuring the meat, milk, eggs, and so on. But with this expectation, CPP and ECOP will also expect you to source as much of the ingredients as you can within the community so that we can promote community content. And once the catering contractor has been onboarded, or perhaps at the CFT stage, the strategy for doing this will be discussed between the catering contractors and CPP. What else were we talking about? Packaging and distribution. So maybe I should start here. Angela touched on this, the tiering structure in the sector, right? So we have our tier 1 contractor, who is CPP. The contractor who will be onboarded will be tier 2 because you're contracted by CPP. And of course, we don't expect you to do all this work by yourself because it's a huge scope. So you will have your tier 3, tier 4 contractors who then support you in delivering on the scope of services listed here. I think the only scope that has been closed so far is the kitchen utensils, where an EOI ran for these already, and I think they have identified the contractor who will provide those, but everything else will be expected to be delivered by the catering contractor, who will have subcontractors under them supporting them to deliver on the scope. Yeah. There was a last question, Mattia.
From?
The lady over there. I don't know if you answered.
No, I partially responded to it, but we can take it up. Can we proceed to camp management, and then we can have a last round of questions? Okay, Dennis.
Morning. Mattia, it's not a hard question, don't worry. Thank you for this. Mine is a simple one. I just want to know about payment cycles. How often do you pay after submission of invoice, such that people can know how to plan?
Thank you, Dennis. Dennis is passionate about payment cycle. Every conference he asks about the payment cycle. Currently, our payment cycle from our client is 45 days, working days. We know this is a concern to many Ugandan contractors, and because it makes also our cycle quite longer, about 60 working days. But our engagement last time with ECOP, rather with the PAU, was like, we need to have a way to work this down. Currently, much as that is our cycle, we are trying to meet our payment obligation is within 30 days after invoicing currently. But that is our own effort as CPP, but what needs to be known to the contractors here is that it's about 60 working days, much as their efforts to make it shorter, and we are working as ECOP together with the regulator to have this shortened. Thank you. Camp management. Maybe before I continue, I would like to recognize the arrival of Mr. Nyakailu, Senior National Content Officer from Petroleum Authority of Uganda. Welcome, sir. In camp management, we have all these kinds of services that we are going to require for all the 6 camps that we have in Uganda. And they are categorized into maintenance services for camp on a daily basis. We have human resource services. For example, providing cleaning service personnel, fuel operator personnel, mechanical workers, plumbers, equipment repairers, drivers, etc. We also have security services. We need security in these camps, including regular inspections around the camp area, operation of the security system in the camp area, security checks for vehicles and personnel entering and also exiting the camps. We shall need medical services. If you have attended some conferences with us, you will realize that some of these services we are talking about, we have contracted them to some other companies prior, but that was for other civil works. We commenced at PS1 and PS2 for the above the ground installations. But as we go into the main pipeline works, we are also going to require the same services. So HS is very critical. We must have a clinic in every camp. We must have standby ambulances with paramedics on board. And these are also going to be advertised. We need waste disposal. We need fire protection services in these camps, supply of the firefighting system or firefighting equipment, communication solutions in the camps, and office supply plus fuel. When you look down, you realize that fuel and office supply expressions of interest have been closed. And now we are in the call for tender process. Actually, for fuel, even the tender documents have been submitted. We are now heading to evaluation for those contracts. So the last two have been closed. They are not open, but all the rest are still available and they're going to be coming up. I hope from this conference we have some participants who will be interested in also supplying those services for our camps when we complete construction and we start operations in those areas. So on ground maintenance, without kind of lawn care, landscaping, usual maintenance, plumbing, you have to continuously do checks on cloggings, plumbing issues, maintenance faucets, toilets, showers, etc., etc. The same with the electricals. So for companies specializing in electrical works, you are also welcome. Heating, ventilation, and air conditioning systems. This is going to be very critical. We have kitchen facilities, maintenance. We have safety equipment, building and structural maintenance, equipment, and vector control, just to avoid deforestations in the camps. And yeah, these are all coming up. This thing is again back to catering. It is some kind of service that will be required to support and enhance the catering service. And they will include food and safety regulation. This might be done by catering companies. We need the business registration for catering companies. This is not only registration, but also need to be under the regulator on the National Supplier Database. We look at hygiene and sanitation for catering companies. We said earlier on that issues of food poisoning might hinder the project progress by shuttling down operations. So key consideration to welfare of the people should be taken into account from the handling and storage, menu labeling. Some people might be allergic to some kind of food. And supply chain and food sourcing. We need to have good sources for ingredients. One, not to store the supply chain, but also the standards should be okay. Waste management, we have to dispose of our wastes in a responsible manner. Allergen management, staff training, hazard analysis and critical control points. Then checking with the local health departments for specific requirements and inspection related to catering services. These are the list of the standards, but the key, if our players are having ISO certification, it is advantageous. And also the Ugandan standards under UNBS. Like we said earlier, we are going to have a session by UNBS on standards, and we ask that you pay close attention. This is for water supply and kitchen mess. Still just guidelines on how best we can have the best practices in place to avoid any incidents in our camps. Basically, our procurement cycles for these opportunities always start with expressions of interest. Then we pre-qualify those that you have met the basic requirements as set out in the EOI document. Then we send out call for tender to the successful parties. After we send out calls for tender documents, we can have classification meeting, normally known as pre-bid meeting in government operations. Then we evaluate, taking into consideration community and national players. So the successful parties will be awarded the contracts, and then we start on executing the contracts with our subcontractors. Like we said, and like it is a mandate, all our subcontractors must be registered with the Petroleum Authority of Uganda or the National Supplier Database. But currently, it does not only stop at registration, you must also be classified. The reason for classification, I think, was born out of a lot of games here and there. There were companies that were registering here, domiciling in Uganda, when actually they were never in the hands of Ugandans. So PAU made it deliberate that physical verifications are done to ensure that these companies are for Ugandans, so that what is for Ugandans is for Ugandans. So when you qualify, please go ahead and clarify. Even as CPP, we will not sign a contract with you until you are classified as a Ugandan, and for a contract which is reserved for Ugandan companies. So do this tab PAU, let them come, do the verifications early in time, such that when an opportunity knocks at your door, nothing stands in your way. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. We will take questions again on camp management, and that will be it. There is a hand at the back. The last step on your right.
Thank you so much for the presentation. My name is Renny Mirembe. I work with Dagan Bragan Limited. We are a cleaning and pest control company. So you've talked about 6 camps in different districts. And my concern is, just like the lady over there said about cleaning standards and whatnot, I want to understand, how are you going to ensure that there is hygiene and safety for the products that are coming in and the products that are leaving? Because what I know, being a food industry, what attracts pests to where we live is food. So when you talk about vector control, is that pest control? 2, if it is pest control, why is it not listed among the services that you require? Also, when you look at the way food comes in, like for the hotels where we've worked in, there is what we call FIFA. The first in is first out. How are we going to maintain that so that we have a green and clean environment in all the camps that you're going to be working at? Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? I think on slide 14, the last thing on the bottom is vector control. You might not see it from here, sorry. But the last item in the maintenance services is insect and pest control. It's down there. Yeah. There's a question at the front.
Badru once again. Matia, can we go back to slide 13? Okay, camp management, we expect one tier 2 to handle or supervise all this as well, or we are going to segregate all these services to different service providers and being supervised by CPP. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll also encourage the other CPP team that's here to support Matia with some of the questions coming in.
Thank you. My name is Peter Sekoyama. I'm from Strategia Meta Initiative. So my question is about the procurement process. You issue out a request for tenders, like in 3 weeks, you need a response or you need the submission of the proposals within 3 weeks. So my worry is when you submit the proposals, the evaluation can take like 5 months, you wait and you even get tired, or you forget whether you really submitted the proposal. My worry is not about the time it takes, but it's about the silence. Because, I don't know, someone talked about the information, that information is power, and you will really appreciate that information is power. So I suggest that if possible, you always inform us regarding the processes that maybe we are at this stage, because sometimes all that enthusiasm that we are waiting for our proposals, we submitted this, and you get no information. After maybe 6 years, you just hear it in rumors that the proposal was awarded. So I don't know how you can address that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Natasha, can
respond first?
Yeah. What we want to make clear is that we are partners. Please, if you desire to know what is going on, please reach out to us. I think you have also been keeping quiet. I've been around for this project for around 8 years. And sometimes I think if it is an issue of an update, please write to us. We are always available and prompt to get back at you in time, because we know it creates a kind of anxiety feeling when you don't get to hear from us. Here are my colleagues, but also in those in those advertisements for bids, their contacts, right back to us. And maybe, Marian, they can always maybe reach out to the national content team at CPP and ECOP, and we get to talk. But sometimes the delay may not be CPP's own making. There are so many dynamics there. And also, we roll out so many advertisements to prepare ourselves for the execution of the works when we get going. Because we don't want to reach a certain stage, and again, we go back to EOIs. We might be even pre-qualifying for EOIs for next year, July. But once we have our preferred people listed already, we just now proceed with the procurement process. We can be expedited.
And my tip would be, don't let these people leave without getting their contacts, so that you can reach out to them directly.
Yeah. Thank you. My name's again Martin Owori. I think Mattia raised the issue or mentioned it, the issue of working together, or we are in partnership. Because if you expect me to have the capacity to fulfill all this in advance, because you say you'll advertise, you'll come and inspect, then that capacity will be redundant as of now. Because that means we have over capacity. Assuming I have now the capacity to feed 300 people in December, and there are no 300 people to be fed. So I have to wait until April next year with that capacity. So I think growing together is what is important. So what is the minimum capacity, and do I have the capacity to expand to that? Why I'm saying this is always upcountry. We are viewed as we are tier 4. I think that's the lowest, isn't it? And our experience there, a person appears from Kampala as tier 2, and then they come and buy food from us. I give him chairs, I give him tables, I give him food, everything. Where he is supposed to be tier 4 and me tier 2, He is actually tier 2 and I'm tier 4 on the supplies. So we need to grow together. For example, Hoima Resort, we are ISO certified. But many occasions and many situations were considered low. We were challenged by CNOC to provide food for 10,000 people. We provided, and they were shocked that we actually have that high capacity because the training institutions are there. Catering institutions, the students are there, well-trained, jobless, very many floating. We can assemble them. So working together is what I was emphasizing, that let's partner. Tell us in advance. Like now you have told us in April you want to start. If you want to start in April, you need food. These foods haven't been planted. People haven't planted them. Now, by April, you are asking for this food. There is no food. You are asking me to provide the staffing. Some of them are still in school. But if I'm told now, build these capacities, I'm giving you 3 months. Train the staff. I will go to these training institutions, recruit all these catering boys and girls, train them to the capacity you want, and then make them available at the time you need. Thank you.
Okay, maybe we should first get those questions, Mattia.
Let me not forget Mr. Badru.
Yes.
These are going to be separate contracts. You cannot have a guy doing medical emergency service like city ambulance, doing maintenance for the lawn, so they're going to be independent. The reason is that we don't want to gamble with this project. You know, there's also a tendency for Ugandan companies of doing everything. You advocate for civil works, you see a waste disposal company also putting in an EOI. Let us try to be, let us specialize, and because it also biases us when we're evaluating, how can I evaluate a waste disposal company for excavation? So they're going to be independent contracts. Martini, Hoima Resort. Actually, I think looking at upcountry farms as the lower grade is not a thing for us. Maybe the problem comes when these opportunities pass you, like an EOI goes out and people miss it. Then if the pre-qualification is finished, it becomes for you to join the procurement process midway. That is why you will have incidences of Kampala companies that maybe got this EOI and were pre-qualified. They go through the procurement process, but when actually they are going to get some of the equipments and services from you people in the upcountry. But if you participate in the procurement process, you are all given equal chance and equal opportunity, depending on your responsiveness to the tender documents. There's nothing as classification of upcountry farms or companies as of lower grade, no. What we need to do, let us be very keen on this information coming. If you miss a paper, at least after every 2 days, check the ECOP website. We post all our tenders on the ECOP website and participate. If you have the qualifications, you're going to be treated as any other Ugandan company, and we shall work together. I think
I just wanted to speak a little bit more to Hoima Resort's question of capacity building. To be fair to the oil and gas sector, there's been a lot of sensitization about the requirements. We've held a number of regional engagements. We've held a number of different players talk about UNOC. We're always in Hoima talking about what is coming. This has been going on for over 2 years. So I think the onus is on us as Ugandans. Much as the opportunities are there, we also have to express interest and prepare. The message from PAU has always been prepare, prepare, prepare. And how do you prepare? Seek for information, engage, and find out. So regarding engaging with having the local, the community companies as tier one, it's very, very possible, and we have a number of success stories. And please be encouraged that you can actually compete. The word is competing. Compete with these Kampala companies, and you can beat them. Because if you look at the costs of doing your business, I think you would even be more advantaged compared to the guys from Kampala. So don't feel intimidated at anyone, in any one way, not to participate. Participate, the evaluation procedures will be fair, and I think will be more favorable to you. After the catering firms have been identified in January, we're going to run regional engagements again, now with the catering firms, to engage further the community companies, because the strategy that we have shared with PAU on how this community strategy is going to be employed or be deployed is clear. So after the catering firms have been identified and the camp management firms, we're going down to all these districts to now engage with the communities. So even if you're not given this big contract of catering, but there are many opportunities where you can feed in and get a share of this. Thank you. That's what I wanted to clarify. Over to you.
Thank you, Marian. And would it be fair to say there are more no questions and we close? There's a gentleman in a red shirt.
Check one. Thank you. My name is Geoffrey. I work with a company called M40. And I want to highlight a few words you used, you and Marian. Fairness. You ran a request for proposal for human resource services this year. I submitted a document, I think in the month of June. They requested for, no, they didn't request. Either June or August, I was told I was not successful. I asked for the reasons, and I want also to respond to that gentleman. CPP usually, when you follow up, they respond. I want to defend them on that. They do respond. Now, I asked for the reason why we were not successful, and they told us we submitted 2 books of accounts. Yes, they requested for 3. I shared back the document I submitted the first time, and I actually submitted 3. The response was, okay, the truth is I responded a bit late because they told me, they gave me a date before 10th. And they told me we are not taking any further information because this award was given. Yes, I don't want to go back to that, but I want to highlight the fact that when you talk about fairness, please be fair. That's all I'm saying. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I just wanted to get clarification on what the gentleman from Hoima had asked. Some of these timelines We're looking at May 2024. Are these contracts that have already been awarded, or we are expecting to now start the processes of tendering, and within a period of 5 months, then I think that the time frame is very short for some of these expectations. I don't know if you answered that he had asked that specific question. I don't know if that was answered.
Just before, sorry, this is Israel, national content. Just before you answer, Mattia, I just want to make sure that people don't use their own data. I'm seeing guys are using their own data. Please, the Wi-Fi password is on your table. Please check your table, use Wi-Fi, don't use your data, at least after lunch. Thank you. And also, just something else, if you know you have not registered, please, we can work out smartly, then you register yourself. Some of you guys we didn't capture your registration, so we are still fair, sir. I'll take in, I'm not going to throw anyone out. Just come and register, and all will be fine, if you know you have not registered. Thank you. Mattia?
Thank you, Israel. To my brother in the red shirt, Geoffrey. We aim to be very fair, and please let that singular incident be a roadblock. We look out to putting everything right. To my brother who is asking about these contracts, would have already been given out? No, they have not been given out. These are contracts that are up for grabs. And to me, 5 months isn't so bad. We can really do so much in 5 months. Like Marian has said, capacity building has been the core of ECOP. And for us to stand here and say, in April we need the food is not yet planted, I think it is self-defeating. We have to have a way. 5 months is fair enough for a procurement cycle to be done. And we seem to be out of questions. If there are more questions, we are around the whole day. Today, you can get our personal emails and our personal telephone contacts. We also have the national content team, because this is basically about national content. So we have national content team from ECOP. We have national content team from CPP. We have national content from Wale. Please let us engage throughout the day till 2 o'clock, and we move forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Mattia, for that presentation. And thank you to the CPP team. The CPP team are seated right here. These 4 gentlemen here all work for CPP, so please do engage them during and after the forum. To add to what Mattia was saying about sharing information, and have these EOIs yet gone out? On the slides that he has presented, it indicates when they're planning on launching the EOIs. So you guys are getting a sneak peek of what is to come, basically. These EOIs haven't yet been released yet, but the plan is early 2024. EOIs will go out for these services, catering and camp maintenance, and you have first-hand information, really. So I encourage you to prepare. You might not get much rest over the Christmas break if you're preparing, but it's okay. Just prepare, and when the EOI is released, since we have you registered, we'll also further share that with you, but keep an eye on our ECOP website, and please do participate, because if you don't respond to the EOI, then you're not going to come back to us and say, we didn't know, because really, there's no excuse now. You have the first-hand information, so participate. Okay, so Mattia talked or touched on standards, and we know that this can be a very finicky subject. What are the standards? What are the expectations? And in Uganda, the Uganda National Bureau of Standards regulates the standards of the country, and there's no exception for the catering that will be provided. So we have invited someone from UNBS to come and deliver a presentation on what the standards are as they pertain to food and catering. So Mr. Hakim, you're very welcome. Come and deliver your presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the introduction. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm glad to meet you today. Probably most of you have eaten your food that you have prepared, because I see a number of suppliers or facilities that prepare food. As introduced, my name is Hakim Mufumbiro. I work at Uganda National Bureau of Standards. I've been developing standards for the last 15 years in the area of food and agriculture. So if you're looking for anyone who knows standards in Uganda, you're not very far from the actual source. Otherwise, I'm a food scientist, food safety specialist, and this morning, given the time that is available, I'll share with you a number of proposals that I'll give the providers, potential providers, if you're going to position yourselves to be able to competitively engage in this sector. As Ali alluded to, there are no two ways about it. If you don't meet standards, you're likely not in the business that you're supposed to be in. That is the bottom line. Because generally standards are universal. There are standards for literally everything. Notwithstanding our level of quality infrastructure in Uganda, where we don't appear to be using standards on a daily basis, although intentionally we actually use them as we go on in our daily lives. But with all the standards that we actually have, the ones for food are extremely very critical, because I don't know how many of us in the room here have taken more than 6 hours without taking a meal, any type of food or a drink or any type of product. That tells you about the impact of standards in the area of food and agriculture. And because Uganda is heavily agrarian, we are now trying to industrialize, which is the direction for the government. The standards in this area have become extremely very critical. So in terms of what I'll touch on, I'll majorly focus in the catering area, because if I'm to delve into the available standards which exist in Uganda, I'll probably require the whole day to do that, because we have developed close to 1,200 standards just in the area of food and agriculture alone. So the message that I bring is that for the time I've been developing standards, I do not know any product, any service in the food and agriculture sector that does not have a Uganda standard. And I'm happy to take that feedback if anyone in the room knows any of the products that trade in the country that does not have an applicable Uganda standard. I'll be happy to get that information and be able to work with you to develop that standard if it actually exists. So in terms of the presentation that I'll give this morning, I'll provide a context given the diverse nature of stakeholders or providers that are in the room to be on the same page with regard to what standards are. I'll be reflecting on some of the issues that Mattia raised in his presentation, majorly on the regulatory perspective, and then I'll provide some potential solutions that you could quickly run with, probably in the given time you have. I'm not sure that the time you have, if you're not already certified, that you'll actually be able to make it. But we'll talk about that as we go along. So in terms of the context, whereas many people in Uganda, for example, have known UNBS, if you go to the countryside, or if you go to Kampala Road right now, they'll tell you UNBS is about weighing scales, minzani. If you go to up country, UNBS is actually known for weights and measures. In fact, the weights and measures are not part of the UNBS mandate. We're only doing that as a delegated role from the Ministry of Trade. UNBS does precisely only 4 things: standardization, quality assurance, metrology, and testing. Those are the main 4 things that UNBS does, and that's what gives us the role as a government agency. The rest of the 3 other items that I've mentioned only are able to be undertaken if there's an available standard. So we are only able to certify someone in the catering service if we have actually developed a standard for catering, mass catering, or so on. If we don't have a standard for that sector, we actually don't have business getting into certification for that particular sector. If someone is producing eggs, we can only go ahead and test the eggs because we have actually developed a standard for eggs. If someone is processing milk, we'll only be able to assess, confirm, and certify that particular provider because we actually have a standard for milk. That is the first step, and that's the foundation within UNBS is actually built. The other services of certification, import inspection, surveillance, and the rest of the services are only functional because of the availability of standards. Those who are looking towards importing of products, probably some of you do, ingredients that you might be wanting to supply to this sector, our imports regulations are very clear. You can source from anywhere, given that we're in a liberalized environment, and wherever you actually get materials is fine. But for most of the services that the industry will be requiring, I don't think there's even need to actually import anything. Uganda has literally everything, most of the things. We only need to actually get to the level of applying the necessary standards which are available. So these are the main aspects that we do. And additionally, while we partake of the standards, one of the key functions that the standards apply is our ability to actually be able to test and confirm that the products meet the standards. If we have set a standard for aflatoxins in maize, we must be able to test and confirm that there's actually no aflatoxin in maize, or there is no veterinary drug residues in meat, or there is no pesticide residues in fruits and vegetables. If we can't test, we actually cannot set the standard. That's the principle. We are happy to note that in Uganda we have robust quality infrastructure in terms of testing infrastructure. And in fact, the UNBS lab, I don't know how many of you have been to UNBS of late, is one of the biggest food safety laboratories in East and Central Africa. If you have not been there, I invite you to actually come and visit UNBS. You will actually see the kind of scope that we have actually been able to build to support the quality assurance system that we actually currently have in terms of standards. Additionally, to explain the standards, because I saw one of the slides that Mattia had, he had several abbreviations of standards from different parts of the world, and which apply in different contexts. In Uganda, and I'm using in Uganda because the oil and gas sector is not anywhere else but in Uganda, the standards that apply for anything are Uganda standards as a starting point. We do not go away from the Uganda standards because standards are universal. Being Uganda standard does not make them any inferior to any of the standards that apply elsewhere, the US, the EU, Australia, and everywhere. The standards are heavily universal. So the standards we apply in food are not different from the standards you will find anywhere else in the world. The only differences are in the application. in the infrastructure that we actually have, in the system that we actually deploy. That is the only difference that we actually have, or in the regulators that actually exist. Otherwise, in terms of the science and the requirements that we provide in the standards, they are the same. No one should actually tell you that there's actually a difference. And no sector should actually require other standards other than those that are issued by Uganda National Bureau of Standards in terms of Uganda standards. If there's anyone requiring those standards, they actually are not fair enough. I'm using the words that have just come previously in the previous discussion. So that should be the first standard. If you're going to supply meat, the standard for meat should actually apply, which you actually have in Uganda. If you're going to supply any product, the current existing Uganda standards apply for those particular products. So that is a principle. And that's what I'm trying to share, that whereas we might be having Uganda standards, they're actually the same as the regional standards we actually have in the ESC. Right now, we are also actually, we are comforted that in the ESC we have done a lot of work in terms of harmonization of standards. In fact, in the East African community, the harmonization of standards is the main pillar that is driving trade in the region. Milk would have never moved from Uganda to Kenya unless if there was actually a Uganda standard, or an East African standard for that matter, or any of the products that actually are moving across the borders. The only reason they are moving is because they're actually Uganda standards, or because they are regional standards, or because we have adopted international standards, either from ISO or from the Codex Alimentarius. That's the impact that standards have. And recently, I don't know whether we have policy analysts here, we did an attribution on what Uganda standards actually contribute to the GDP of the economy, using a lot of simulations and all that. And we actually found that Uganda standards are contributing significantly to the Ugandan economy. But we are not attributing that in terms of our development indicators, because we are probably just an agency within the government system that is applying and developing standards. So the message is, for any of the products or services which are going to be supplied in the oil and gas sector, the Uganda standards exist. They should actually be the ones to be used, and they could be indigenous Uganda standards for products which are peculiar for Uganda. If people are going to ask for nsenene, you will not find an international standard for nsenene, because the nsenene is actually prevalent here. If someone is actually going to ask for apples, the standard is most likely going to be international, because apples move globally. If someone is going to ask for products which cut across the region, cereals, pulses, and all that, you will actually find them as East African standards, because those products are actually able to move within the region. That's the rationale within which we actually develop standards. And to comfort the providers that if you're actually able to meet the Uganda standards, then you should actually be able to freely and predictably supply to this sector as easy as possible. And in fact, people who actually meet standards find it very easy to penetrate any market that's actually available. To provide additional context in terms of what standards do, the key role that UNBS plays is probably twofold. We're seeking to protect the health and safety of the consumers, while at the same time ensuring that trade can actually be able to proceed as predictable as possible. So we try to find a fine balance between not being overly restrictive, but at the same time allowing goods and services to actually flow as much as possible, as long as the consumers of the products are actually protected. So we start from that point, but we don't lose sight of the fact that at the end of the day, when we actually develop a standard, it should be for a purpose. And that purpose is actually what we actually provide in the available standard. So we have standards for literally everything, as I started from, products, services, management systems, and related aspects. Depending on where you are, you'd actually be able to apply that particular standard. But today I'll only focus on the catering standard, which is majorly like a service standard and not the traditional product or specific standards that we normally are used to. So to provide some detail about why we would actually require catering standards, this was done internationally some years back within the Codex Alimentarius on why there was actually a need to actually develop standards in the catering sector or the catering business or the catering service. Foodborne diseases are prevalent in this sector. Any one of you who has been in most of these establishments, you have probably gone back home and not had a very good experience after that, it's because there might have been some contamination somewhere, or many of the people who actually consume these foods could be vulnerable because of the foods that we produce in mass. We're supplying to children, we're supplying to schools, we're supplying to hospitals, and many other sectors. So we need to take care of all the risks that are involved in that process. And because of that, it was agreed that we actually required a standard that could give a framework within which the guidelines and hygienic guidelines and practices can actually be able to be implemented to ensure that the safety of the food meets the necessary requirements. So the only thing that we're talking about in the catering standards is about the safety of the food. As I indicated earlier, that's the starting point. You only start by producing safe food before you actually go into supplying the food. If there is actually no safe food, you actually don't have food at the end of the day, because that's the cardinal principle. Without any safety, you actually don't talk about any food at all. So the issue is to look at the weight of the evidence that we actually have. That's what actually gave rise to development of standards in this sector. And I alluded to this earlier on, that you can see the volume and number of standards that Uganda National Bureau of Standards has developed over years. Like I indicated from the start, when I joined UNBS in 2009 or 2008, thereabout, Uganda don't develop probably close to 1,000 standards. We're now closing into 5,000 standards, which means that we have actually taken care of all the necessary needs which are required for standards. And the food and agriculture sector has been extremely very busy in developing. The news that I have is that we are no longer very much interested in developing anymore. We're now interested in people implementing the standards, because it doesn't give us the comfort if we have very many standards, but the quality and safety of the food that we actually find on the market does not really predict or speak the standards that we have actually been able to develop. So we actually want to see that the standards that are available speak to the actual where we actually produce, handle, store, and transport the food. Of course, many of us, we are a bit uncomfortable with most of the things that we actually find in the market. Whereas I may be developing standards, I go to the same markets that everyone goes. So I'll go to Kalero and find the tomatoes on the ground. I'll be in traffic and find animals with the tails tied on a fuso truck. Or I'll find people moving with meat in open air on a border. So whereas we have standards, there's a little bit of big challenges regarding implementation. But I will give some perspectives in terms of what the catering sector can actually be able to do. Because when you go to a service, it is much more easier to actually implement a standard other than if you are producing a product. And the reason is you actually determine what you're actually able to do. The dilemma that we still have with standards is that many of the establishments are focused on copying and pasting. Because my neighbor has a restaurant or a facility which produces food and is doing all these other things, so I must be able to do them. Every process has its peculiarities and must be determined as such. Every process has its own risks, and they must be identified and closed depending on how you actually produce, store, and transport the food. You don't have to actually be like the other person. The only thing is, as long as you maintain the principle. So today I'll be sharing what are the main principles within which you can actually be able to approach the standards activities. These are just some of the standards. I know that Amatia had a slide that had a list of standards, including product standards, which are available. I've picked a number of them that are important for catering because I didn't want to overstretch the scope of this presentation. Otherwise, then I would have probably not been targeted. So my main interest is majorly on standards that are applicable in the catering business. And if you're in the catering business and you have been in business for some time and you're not aware of these standards, I could tell you that you're probably late. If you are looking towards responding to the expression of interest, you're extremely very late, because the first starting point for you is to actually understand that these standards exist. Then after that, you actually now start talking about implementation. The challenge that we normally have with most of the players is that they start running even before they walk. So immediately there's an expression of interest. That's when they actually start now thinking about getting assessed and getting certified. The message that I'll actually give you is that if you've started your business, it is small, it's a catering service, you're producing food for a number of people, you have to start incorporating standard-related activities in that small process. You don't get a standard process from anywhere. You include them as part of your system. That's the way standards are built into your process. Otherwise, you'll not buy them from anywhere. You'll not get hygienic standards from anywhere. You must be able to build them in your own system. So these are some of the main standards. And today I'll focus on just one of the standards, which is international, which is ISO, US ISO, the Technical Specification 22002. And the reason I'm focusing on that standard is because global standards are normally developed to incorporate everyone, regardless of the size of the business. So if you are large scale, producing so many meals for people, or if you are small scale with a very small coverage and capacity, you can actually fit in the standard depending on actually how you produce and handle the food. So the standard is actually universal and actually covers everyone. And the reason this is important is because it's an international standard. Because the players we're actually going to be having are international players who will be in most of these camps, they'll most likely relate with this international standard. And because you can actually be able to apply and implement the basic requirements of the international standard, you should actually not be able to fail to actually participate in this part of the sectors at the end of the day. So the focus is, if you are actually able to put up the necessary requirements, or what they call prerequisite programs, or what they call foundational systems, then there's nothing that actually stops you from meeting the standards which are available. And these are the foundation aspects that I'll actually be sharing shortly that determine whether you actually meet the standard or not. And additionally, I've previously seen that we have a lot of zeal and need for most of the standards for these other particular aspects. The other beauty with management and system standards is that they give you the full scope of application. So you don't only focus on the product, you focus on the system. And if the system is working, most likely the product they're actually producing is actually the right product. That is the approach of management and systems. And I would appeal that the catering service actually takes that approach, because when we're auditing systems, we are focusing on what you do to actually meet the product and not the product itself, which is different. If I went to audit someone who is producing UHT milk, I'll be majorly focusing on whether the UHT milk actually meets the standard and less on how the process is actually done to actually meet the standard. While in catering as a service, I'll be interested in looking at whatever you actually be able to do until the food gets onto the table of someone who's actually going to consume it, because it's actually a service. So the requirements are several. I just picked this for purposes of giving you that whether you are producing in a small facility, whether you are in a school, whether you are in a different facility, whether you are producing for mass or you're producing for a few people, everyone is covered in the standard because it is an international standard. And you don't have to fear that because it's an international standard, the standard is high. The same people develop the international standards are UNBS and stakeholders. No one else develops that international standard. It is the countries themselves, and we develop them by providing our input into the process. So you cannot be indicating that the international standards are way higher than what you can actually be able to achieve as a small entity or as a small and micro enterprise. Everyone from a very small and micro enterprise can actually be able to apply this standard depending on what scope that you actually have in the process. And as you can see, it has been developed with that in mind, that we have big players, we have medium players, and we have very small players. Everyone gets a piece of the pie as part of the implementation of the standard. So it doesn't segregate. Although the reason it is seen as segregation is only the big players who normally apply the standard. That does not mean that the small ones can't actually apply them. Everyone can actually apply the standards regardless of the size and the nature of the business. So this is these are the principles now, as I get to the last parts of my slides in terms of where I'll provide a conclusion and recommendation. If you are going to apply and do most of these things, then you are most likely going to get closer to meeting the standards. The advice I normally give prospective suppliers, clients, potential people who are in this any kind of business is that even before you start running to think that you can actually get certified to an international standard, first do an assessment for yourself. What do you actually have in terms of the basic infrastructure? Do you have hand washing facilities? Are your employees medically examined? What kind of environment do you actually produce the food in? Is there any system that can actually avoid cross-contamination? These are the basic fundamentals which have to be there before you actually now start thinking that you're actually ready for certification or you're ready for supplying to a sensitive sector like the oil and gas sector. So the message that I will actually have for the suppliers is that let's have a focus on most of the fundamentals that are necessary. Layout of your premises, supply of the water. If it is potable, you're going to wash vegetables, it must be potable water. You can't use any kind of grade of water in terms of washing your vegetables, because at the end of the day, you're actually contaminating the vegetables, and that spills over the people who are going to consume the vegetables. So we need to have the full approach of how the system actually operates. Equipment and utensils, personnel hygiene, purchasing management. So because you're doing a business or a service, we don't only, the management system standards don't only restrict itself on the product itself. We tend to focus on the entire framework. Where do you purchase your ingredients? Where do you purchase your raw materials? Have you assessed the kind of people actually provide with the raw materials? Because if you do not do that, then you're likely going to compromise your processes. So you must be interested in who is supplying you, because if you're not interested in who is supplying you, you most likely not be able to provide measures to prevent contamination in the process. Storage, cleaning, waste management, pest and animal control, someone talked about it earlier, supervision, documentation and records, and product recall procedures. These are normally the last aspects which normally don't even happen in a country like Uganda. We don't have a lot of product recalls. But what is important about systems or services is documentation and records. The principle with documentation and records is that if I come to your catering service and you have never documented anything, when you received the wheat flour, when you received the bananas, when you received the tomatoes, when you received the onions to make the meals that you actually serve me, I will most likely not be comfortable with the system that you actually apply. Because if it's not written down, it's most likely it's actually not being done. That's the most likely conclusion. So the focus of management systems is that you must be able to actually have documentation and records. That is normally the area which puts off most of the smaller enterprises, and we actually understand. What UNBS has done is that for the small and medium enterprises, we have a different regime for them. You don't have to actually keep anything. Focus on the priority records which are actually available, which should actually be maintained. You don't need to have everything available. While the big enterprises should be having everything because their impact is severe. The people they're serving food are many, so the impact is high. While the smaller establishments, you can actually be able to focus on only the food safety areas which are of critical nature, and those are the records you would actually be able to see in your production. But if you don't have any records, then you most likely are not even ready for certification or for meeting the necessary requirements. So documentation is extremely very critical before you actually think about getting ready to get into this kind of business. Specifically, these would be some of the other elements which are relevant to now a full establishment that is actually doing any food, through the preparation to cooking. If you're thawing, what temperature are you thawing the food at? All these are actually governed by applicable standards. You cannot be thawing food and then it is less than 4 degrees centigrade. That is probably not thawing anymore. So it must be at least 4 degrees and more. If you're refrigerating, if you're freezing the food, if it's frozen food, it must be less than minus 18 degrees centigrade, at least minus 18 degrees centigrade. And these are the fundamental principles that we actually want the service provider to actually be able to check and monitor. If you're cooking the food, it must be cooked at a temperature which you can actually be able to monitor, that the food was actually cooked up to probably 70 degrees, 75 degrees, depending on the food that you're cooking. But the standard is at least 65 degrees centigrade. If you're able to achieve that temperature, then you're actually able to maintain the safety of the food. And probably that's the only reason why many of the people, whereas we don't have a lot of very good hygienic practices. I don't know how many of you walk to downtown, where many of the majority of the Ugandans eat the food which is served on the streets or in the parking in the car parks and all that up country. You'll just find food lined up on charcoal stoves. The reason probably we are protected is because they cook that food to higher temperatures. So at higher temperatures, you don't actually expect the microorganisms to survive. While in the developed world, they actually eat probably raw food. They eat food which is cold. So probably that's why they actually have a lot of food safety incidents that we actually don't have. So in a way, we are protected, but that's not a solution of bad hygiene. The principle is you must be able to maintain the basic hygienic infrastructure or basic hygienic systems. And as I indicated earlier, the hygiene is universal. It does not it does not segregate that you are a high-end catering service and the low-end or small catering service, that you are able to maintain high hygienic standards while the other one does not maintain high hygienic standards. If it is washing hands, that's the principle that everyone should actually be able to wash hands. What that person should be able to understand is why they're actually doing that. If they're able to understand and appreciate why they're doing it, then we can actually be able to talk about the hygienic principles. Every one of you was around when we had COVID. All of a sudden, everyone became orderly. We were using sanitizers. We were using, because what were you fearing? That you may contract the virus and end up getting in hospital and probably getting dying or so on. That's the same principle with food. If you actually don't handle the food well, it will take you to hospital. And we have so many of these cases. So it's important that all these fundamental systems are actually put in place to ensure that you're actually able to meet the necessary requirements. As I indicated earlier, depending on the size of your business, if you have a catering service where you're producing at home in a small garage or in a small boys' quarter, it does not stop you from actually applying the necessary standards. With that smallness, you can actually meet all these requirements which I've talked about. It's about understanding what the system actually requires. Whatever any establishment is putting in place, you can actually be able to put in place. In fact, if you go to many of the countries like India and so on, most of the people actually produce the things that we actually import in the country, just produce them in garages. They don't actually produce them in big facilities. But because they are regulated, they apply systems, everyone applies 9001, they're actually able to maintain the quality of the services that they actually provide. So if you're able to provide and apply quality management systems, you'll actually be able to get on board with the necessary services which are required. As I conclude, part of the reflection, I recall Mattia talked about regulations and the Food and Drugs Act. I don't know how many of you are familiar with the Food and Drugs Act of Uganda, established in 1959. I'm not sure how many of you were born that time. But the story of food in Uganda is that whereas the colonialists were critical, and that was one of the first laws to be established because they knew the importance of the food, unfortunately, that does not appear to be the same importance that we actually carry with the food as well. Probably it's no longer a priority or so on. Yet we all consume food. So the story that we have is that whereas we have the Food and Drugs Act of 1959, in fact, the food component in the Food and Drugs Act has never been operationalized. So to answer Mattia's question earlier, right now if you ask the question, who is the food regulator in Uganda, you may not get a direct answer because it does not exist. Whereas UNBS does part of the work, it's actually just part of the broader aspects that UNBS does. We do very many other things. We check steel, we check cement, we check cosmetics, we check plastics. So food is just part of the work that we actually be able to do. And because of that, we have been seen as a country that is happy to take people to hospital and treat them, yet we should actually have prevented them from eating contaminated food, which is supposed to be the preventive approach that should be deployed in part of these systems. So as people who are in the catering service, I hope you will be able to put in place very good preventive mechanisms to avoid us being in the same cycle of contamination and foodborne diseases that arise from consuming of contaminated food. And I've used that example to make it very clear that whereas as a government infrastructure we have been able to make all the noise and ensure that we actually have a very functional food control system, it's not yet happening like the way it should actually be. And that's one of the reasons why enforcement, implementation, surveillance, and all those other aspects are actually a little bit seem to be lukewarm for the better part because of the emphasis that's actually not there. So, and that applies to the current laws that we actually have. So in 1993, the government established the National Drug Authority and then operationalized the drug component in the Food and Drugs Act. The food component, we have remained orphans for over 60 years. I hope we'll get up soon, maybe. Cabinet passed a resolution recently and we should be able to get on board soon. From the regulatory perspective, what UNBS can do and what I would encourage most of the potential service providers to do is one, the starting point, you need to seek out for the applicable standard for within the scope that you're actually applying. I saw most of the camp services that Mattia was presenting. Everything that he presented, we actually have standards for them. Everything. Human resource, supply chain, everything. We actually have developed standards for them. I don't know any of, and I challenged you from the start that if you actually know any of the areas, I personally did the mapping of most of these sectors, and literally all the sectors are mapped with Uganda standards. So there is literally all the standards that you require for all the services which will be provided in the oil and gas sector right now. For those that might be required, we are actually happy to develop them. So start with understanding which standards apply for your particular area, for your particular scope, and as one of the providers earlier in the discussion indicated, if you don't have the information, you most likely not be able to apply it. So that's the starting point. The good thing that now UNBS does customized training for most of the providers, and you will see that we have actually done that, although it's on demand. So we have never gotten probably substantial demand from the catering service to be able to promote and create awareness of most of these standards and be able to ensure that the changes actually apply to most of these sectors. The case in example that I'll use for the initiative that UNBS has done, all of you were around when we had COVID-19 and we're in the lockdown, and the Office of the Prime Minister was trying to buy maize flour for some of us who are vulnerable. And I'm using some of us because I also got the maize flour in my house. So the OPM distributed the maize flour for the first 1 month or so. Maize flour was not meeting Uganda standards, was high in toxins. But because for them it was about buying the maize flour, it wasn't about the quality and the safety of the people actually going to consume it, which is a cardinal role of UNBS. What UNBS did then was to take the proactive approach and get out to all the maize millers and interest them, go to Kisenyi, go to Nakuwade, go to all these other areas and promote the standards like I'm doing right now. And I can tell you that in 2019, we had probably only 10 companies certified for maize flour. Right now, over 400 of them are actually certified for maize flour. But they're all in Uganda, which were producing maize flour previously. So these are some of the initiatives that actually we think are important in terms of promoting and ensuring information is disseminated to most of the users in the sector. So if this sector is interested, or the catering sector is interested in getting deeper insights on how to best apply and implement catering standards, we're happy to take up that request and we should be able to provide you with that service. As I conclude, to highlight that everyone has a role in the food control system. You have your role, the regulator has their role. If you play your role, everyone will actually be happy. So you should actually be able to take up that responsibility and be able to ensure that the food that we actually get on the table is safe. The principle is the primary responsibility for food safety in Uganda is with the person who is producing the food. Although many people think that the primary responsibility is with the regulator like UNBS, it is you who is producing the food who is liable. And if you actually don't take that responsibility seriously, then you'd actually be having problems in terms of the follow-up steps. And I've given the standard which is available. If any one of you would like to get interested in getting certified to that ISO standard, which I've said that is very easy, no one should scare you that you'll actually not be able to get certified. Reach out to us. You can feel free to send me your request. Would be able to support you along the way to ensure that you actually get certified and service this industry as much as possible. And I believe as the expression of interest may come, they will actually tell you that if you don't have certification, then you actually don't qualify. So immediately you are knocked out of the first stage of evaluation. The ones who supply UNBS is actually here. She will tell you that if you're not certified, you can't actually supply UNBS food. It's not possible. That's the first step, because we are cherishing standards and we apply standards, and we're ensuring that everyone who actually tries to apply standards must be able to actually get certified. Finally, regardless of your level, retaliate, that get on board, apply the standards. It will not be difficult for you. If you have any challenges with the implementation, like I've indicated, we have a fully fledged micro, small, and medium enterprises department that addresses the needs of the small and medium enterprises. So if you need to be handheld, to be supported through the process, we are open to provide that support, and we should be able to get certified along the way. Thank you very much. I hope I must have taken a little bit of more time than required. I appreciate for the time, and I'm happy to take any feedback that might come along the way. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Hakim, for that presentation. We were running, and I forgot to take a break. So what I'm going to do now is invite you all to go outside, grab a cup of coffee or tea, grab a snack, and come back in. We still have more to discuss with you, so please don't leave yet. Just grab a cup of coffee, stretch your legs a bit, and then within 10 minutes, we'll be back in here to finish or summarize the rest of the presentations and ask questions, because I know this was a very important subject. Thank you. For this particular forum, we decided to focus on transport and logistics and the opportunities within the ECOP project.
You're receiving first-hand information. The story is that the project is wide, the opportunities are wide, and you need to know where you play. So what do you do? Which tier you play at? There's tier 1, there's tier 2, there's tier 3, there's tier 4.
Sophisticated and challenging, problematic contract on this project is logistics, getting what we need to where we need it on time.
The term EPC is very similar to EPCMC. EPC just means engineering, procurement, construction. It means temporary worker resource allocation plan, both local and expatriate. And there are certain percentage mixes between the number of Ugandan roles and the number of expatriate future roles that are mandated in both the midstream regulations and the host government agreement.
Briefly, this is our scope on the logistics, inland transportation of cargo from the marshalling yard. Bore is going to deliver, and we shall pick the pipes from their trucks, lay them down, and have them transported. Vehicle rental, we have pickups totaling 4 and flatbed 1, low bed 1.
Today the main discussion is about national content. How do you participate in this project at community level? And the teams are here to explain that to you, because indeed one of the most important things is compliance to standards. So how do you ensure that you participate? And sometimes it takes a group of investors or farmers coming together and working with someone who has fully understood the standards of the industry in the things we call joint ventures.
At least I had to try. We come here because we want to show you which are the real opportunities. So number of jobs for each of the contractors. And be sure that for our main contractors, it is a priority for them to take people from here.
Badde musomo guno gubadde mulungi gumu ebyokuyiga era tusaba Mukama Katonda yatuleetera amafuta ne gayitako essembabule tuyambiddwa nnyo ffe ng'abamu abatuze b'essembabule naddala abalimi n'abalunzi kubanga pulojekiti eno egenda kutuganyula nnyo naddala mu bye tukola mu kulunda mu kulima ebyokulya ffe bijja kufuna akatale era omusomo gubadde guyigiriza nnyo twongere ku standards zaffe mu bye tukola naddala mu by'obulimi n'obulunzi.
We are happy to be here to present you the opportunities and to invite you to attend and to ask us as many questions as you wish, so that you have a possibility to capture some of these opportunities that we're going to present.
The people actually understand what ECOP is about, and they're very expectant for what is to come out. So it's quite interesting to let them know what opportunities are available so that they can align themselves with some of these opportunities, because the opportunities might overwhelm them if they don't prepare. So this engagement has spoken to that, and we hope that with this engagement they will be able to upscale and be able to grow. As Bolloré, we are more interested in the logistics, but particularly the drivers. We had a very good outcome in the communities that in each of the districts we went to, there were drivers, and they came with driver's licenses, they came with CVs, which was very exciting.
The sessions are so far going very well. We've had good attendance. Most of the potential suppliers who are coming in are within the agricultural sector, the catering services, as well as people who are looking at logistics opportunities, the drivers, people with logistics companies, and a few people who are coming from other sectors such as civil works and engineering.
Ebintu bisatu bye tunoonyamu okulaba nti mu mafuta gano agayise ne lwengo tujja kufuniramu wa employment abantu abangi bakyogereko wano ne training.
Now, to make it special in terms of oil and gas operations, I am glad that now at least we've been able to come back with responses, because this was one of the promises that we had made, and we had pledged to come back and explain some of these benefits and ways how the community is going to participate into oil and gas opportunities. And I'm really so glad, and I take my special appreciation to ECOP team and government agencies for coming together to organize this kind of event that has helped to equip the communities, the business people, the leaders with information related to how they can participate into this.
And also, there are leaders that seem to be a little bit ahead of their fellows concerning their preparedness, their registration on the National Supplier Database, and also awareness of what is taking place and trying to establish locally Even when they have other branches operating in Kampala, some have tried to set up locally to see that they are on ground and in the community.
And I would like to say that the 4 contracting companies have provided the best they have been able to provide, and they have given us the websites for which we need more information, that we are able to access it. I would have to say that let us come together as people of Chotera, unite our efforts, especially for small businesses. We can make mergers. We come together. We do partnerships in order for us to match with standards of service delivery.
They need to learn about the standards that are required by ECOP. This is the right time. If they need to engage to find out the qualifications required, we've offered all the information on our website, and all our contractors have been very helpful to provide all the relevant information to make sure that people are ready come 2023 when we actually expect this pipeline to be up and running.
We have been doing these presentations together with our main contractors, who have been also showing the opportunities quantified for all of them. And after that, we have been also handling some group discussion with the people, as surprisingly in Uganda we could see that there is a significant number of farmers within the communities. So we have been grouping farmers together with catering companies in order to see if we can reach the capacity that is necessary to answer to our needs for our main contractors.
My name is Catering Oliver. I've been studying at St. Simon Vocational Training Center, doing a course of welding and metal fabrication.
Catering Oliver is among the 168 beneficiaries from the households affected by the project.
During our training, we did the exams, the assessment for Directorate Industrial Training. I passed very well. Here is my certificate.
Sponsored by ECOP, she successfully completed a 3-month vocational training program in metal fabrication at the St. Simon Peter Vocational Training.
I'm very happy that I've graduated, and I thank God for having kept me alive. I want to look for a workshop. I'll be working from there. I look for money to buy other machines so that I can make my own workshop. I want to thank my parents, ECOP, Montrose, and the staff of St. Simon Vocational Training Center who have supported us during our studies. May the Lord bless you abundantly.
The ECOP is a 1,143-kilometer crude oil export pipeline that will transport Uganda's crude oil from Kampala, Hoima in Uganda to the Chongoleani Peninsula near Tanga Port in Tanzania. The pipeline will be buried to minimize impact on the environment, with some facilities above the ground designed to ensure minimal environmental and social impact. The project will be compliant with Ugandan and Tanzanian national legislations and international requirements.
So ECOP itself is a 24-inch buried pipeline, and around that 24 inches of steel there's some insulation, a little bit like on a thermos flask. That insulation has 2 purposes. It keeps the fluid inside the pipeline warm, and it stops that heat being transmitted to the environment outside.
The survey crew carefully surveys and stakes the right-of-way. Topsoil is stockpiled on the right-of-way boundary. A wheel ditcher, or backhoe, is utilized to form the trench. Stringing ensures that each piece of pipe is positioned accurately for the next phase. If needed, the pipe will be bent to accommodate elevation or horizontal changes. The pipe trench and the associated land within the construction zone are contoured and revegetated. The restoration leaves a typical operational right-of-way.
Land is required to construct the ECOP pipeline and related facilities. The ECOP project, on behalf of the governments of Uganda and Tanzania, is committed to providing compensation for losses due to physical and or economic displacement in compliance with national regulations and IFC performance standards.
As the ECOP, we are working on compensation processes. In total, we have 13,564 project-affected persons, of which 3,660 are in Uganda and 9,904 are in Tanzania. All these processes follow international standards, the Equator Principles, and IFC standards, which are a requirement for our lenders for the project.
ECOP has opened bank accounts for all project-affected persons and their spouses at no cost, and compensations are being paid.
Turozere omutindo gwegiroho namba tubayire itwe nk'abantu notukwe ntukora munego batusa kuombeka enjubiki ya mutindo gwa ECOP yetombekeire ebyo ebintu turozere biri birunge bituhindurire kutuyiho mu mbere endi byatugaru mu mbere mpya kenungi.
ECOP has provided support to all individuals impacted by the project, offering a livelihood restoration program that includes agriculture support, vocational training, and food distribution.
Nini tunafanya kwenye upande wa kilimo ni kuwafanya wagusu waweze kufanya kilimo cha tija ili wapate chakula cha kutosha na pengine wapate hela kwa ajili ya uwekezaji na mahitaji mengine.
Kitu mbegu mpaka na madawa.
Mwaka jana hapa kama pambana mahindi majunia ninachaka mwenyewe ninaruka kabisa. Nashangilia. Wawamba wa mafuta wananishika vizuri.
Hata kwenye mashamba ambayo ni tofauti na ya mradi unakuta zile elimu tunazowagaia zimeshatumika mle.
Ulikuwa wazi mno. Yaani unafanya leo kikao, kesho kuna kikao. Lakini nakwambia ili mpaka yule mguswa awe wazi.
Ajenda za kwenye kijiji hiki huwezi kukuta kwenye kikao pasipo na ajenda ya bomba la mafuta. Kwa ni ajenda yetu ya kudumu kwanza tumepokea bomba la mafuta.
The ECOP is a 1,143-kilometer crude oil export pipeline that will transport Uganda's crude oil from Kampala, Hoima in Uganda to the Chongoleani Peninsula near Tanga Port in Tanzania. The pipeline will be buried to minimize impact on the environment, with some facilities above the ground designed to ensure minimal environmental and social impact. The project will be compliant with Ugandan and Tanzanian national legislations and international requirements.
So ECOP itself is a 24-inch buried pipeline, and around that 24 inches of steel there's some insulation, a little bit like on a thermos flask. That insulation has two purposes. It keeps the fluid inside the pipeline warm, and it stops that heat being transmitted to the environment outside.
The survey crew carefully surveys and stakes the right-of-way. Topsoil is stockpiled on the right-of-way boundary. A wheel ditcher, or backhoe, is utilized to form the trench.
Okay, I will just ask everyone who is outside to make their way back in because we want to start again. So if everyone who is outside could quickly grab their cup of coffee, and then we'll start again in the next 2 minutes. There were a number of questions that came out during the break, so I encourage you, in case you have any questions or you need further clarity, to please seek it now while we're all here, because yes, there's a lot to understand about these different scopes, and we would hate for you to go back and still have those questions and then the EOI comes out and you only have 3 weeks to respond and you're not really entirely clear on what is required for the 2 scopes. So before we went for a break, we had a presentation from Mr. Hakim from UNBS, and I know there are a number of questions to do with that. He shared a lot of information, so we'll just have a Q&A quickly now, in case there are any clarifications from that, or indeed from the other presentations that were said before. Okay. Hoima Resort.
Thank you. I would like to thank Mr. Hakim for the good presentation. On the issue of assessing for the standards, I think the earlier presentation showed that CPP is building the kitchen according to standards. And so we thank CPP for that. They're also buying the equipment, including plates and forks, the storage facilities within the kitchen. The cold rooms are within, meaning that about 90% of the standard requirements in the 6 camps is done by CPP. So what is required of the contractor, the catering firm? Is it the qualification of the staff? Because the equipment is there, everything is already, is going to be already in the camp. Are they going to assess Hoima Resort kitchen? Because Hoima Resort is not going to cook in its own kitchen. It's going to cook in the camp kitchen. So probably on that one will be answered. On getting certification, I went through a process to get ISO for health and safety. It took me about 6 months. It's quite expensive and involving. So now I have to go through another process to have a second ISO certification, which are very related, which we shall do for catering. But of course, all those of us who are upcountry were a bit disadvantaged in that we invite the trainers from Kampala and we have to meet a lot of costs. Maybe that's an area which I wanted Hakim to add more. What exactly is involved? Does it require training staff? For me to get health and safety, we want to train all the staff. And we're paying for the trainers to come and train them and this and that, and make a lot of changes in the hotel, which were very costly. So I think those are the 2 concerns I had. Earlier on, of course, there was the issue, but even within, again, Hakim mentioned, each food has its own standards. Now, to produce food, you need I've been using about roughly 40 items, if you count them. If you're like 48. If you're counting from salt, from meat, then tomato, then onion, and so on and so on. Do we have one standard for catering or a standard for meat? I must meet it, then I meet the standard for chicken, then I meet the standard for tomato, and it's going to be really hell. Maybe you'll help us on that. And finally, my colleague from Italy, she was saying our standards are low. I want to just guide that. You see, the standard for matoke is built in Uganda for the whole world. Kalo is built in the eastern part of Uganda, actually, where I come from. The matoke is from center. Then with sweet potatoes, granite sauce, and I had issues with the beef. When I first recruited the chefs from Kenya, and they're making beef to international standards, and people in Hoima didn't like it. So I had to revert to Hoima standards on beef. Same thing with the chicken. We eat, in Uganda, we eat beef with the stew, beef with the sauce, soup. Meat, chicken with the soup. In Kenya, you don't eat chicken with soup. In Europe, there is no soup completely in chicken. So these are some of the things we have to discuss. Again, also, is the Bureau of Standards using international standards where we shall cook for Ugandans working in the oil companies chicken without soup? Thank you.
Thank you. Those were several questions. I think the first was directed to CPP, which I'll give them to answer. The question was on the fact that the camps come fully furnished with the kitchen and the supporting utensils. And the speaker was assuming that you have designed and built those kitchens according to international standards or the standards that you require. So they were wondering what standards you require of them. Is it just the standard to train their staff, prepare the food, or do you again require them to meet the standards regarding the kitchen utensils, the kitchen facilities that they're using? They're assuming that CPP is providing everything, including the cooling facilities, blah, blah, blah. So.
Yes, much as CPP will be providing almost 90% of the kitchen infrastructure, we definitely will be concerned. Would like to know what your kitchen will be like, because your kitchen will tell us a story of who you are. And we'll make adjustments here and there and tell you this is what we expect of you until we come to a certain point where we have a win-win. Thank you.
Sorry, Mr. Hakim, I'll invite you to the stage so that you can address the questions that our colleague from Hoima Resort asked about. Are they using individual standards for each ingredient they're using? Or is it just for the food prepared? Over to you.
Much for those questions, to probably also touch on what is being built. Many times actually it could actually be seen as an assumption. In fact, there was a time when a development partner was supporting producers of cassava flour in Soroti. And they say to have put up a very good facility, a standard facility, when we're not there, of course. And it was ready for commissioning, they already installed the equipment, and then they invite us. And we find the facility doesn't have aeration, basic infrastructure is not there, so you don't have to just use that assumption that everything will actually be as a standard, unless if you have confirmed that actually this standard has actually been applied in terms of putting it up. But I don't want to doubt the sector. I believe they're applying international standards. The question on items for different items with different standards and what you're supplying. Now this is how it works. If I'm buying pineapples from you and you're the supplier, it is you the supplier to meet the standard for the pineapples. So me as a buyer, I'm requiring that you actually meet the standard. So the buyer at that stage is actually not meeting any standard. It is the person who is supplying the good that actually meets the standard. So if you're a hotel and you have a kitchen and people are supplying you salt, garlic, onions and everything, it is the suppliers who actually meet the standards before they actually supply you those products. So for you, the only thing that you do is to check that the products which have actually been supplied meet the standards. So at that time, you're actually not meeting the standard yourself. So I thought that should actually be very clear that you normally do that by probably sourcing from already certified companies. I know many of the facilities here, what they do is that they only buy ingredients or raw materials from already certified companies, which are actually already meeting standards, which makes it a little bit much more easier. So that will make your work easier, and you don't worry about the 40 or so products that you actually have. So you don't have to meet all of them. What you only need to meet is how you prepare those ingredients, those raw materials into the product that you're actually going to serve, or the service that you're actually going to now provide, which is now a complete meal. So that is what will be your worry. And that is why the focus of my presentation was in the establishment itself. How you handle the food, whether you have partitioning, cross-contamination, the tables that you actually use, the way you have designed your facility, that's what now you should actually be worried about. And that is the catering service that is much more important. So, but because you are in the middle of the process, because you have raw materials, you are processing and then giving out the food, your interest should be whatever is coming in must meet the standard. So it's not you meeting the standard, but those who are actually supplying you must meet the standard. And supply audits are part of the process of management systems. So whoever is supplying you must actually be able to meet the standards. I think the question of whether standards are low or high or so on, I must have touched on it during the presentation. The principle that I gave is that standards are universal. There is no one who will tell you that standards are low in Uganda, or they are high in Kenya, or they are low in Burundi, or high in Rwanda. The only challenge is the way we have actually been able to display our products. Because I started from saying that standards are a way of life, or the way we actually live. So if you are putting tomatoes on the ground in Nakasero market, whereas we actually have a standard for tomatoes, it does not really depict you actually having good standards for display of tomatoes. That's the first step. So because we're not doing the basics, many of the people now assume that we actually don't have the high standards which are required. In those other markets which appear to actually be having high standards, they are heavily regulated. You can't just display products like that, because they have known if you don't target at that stage, you are most likely not going to actually remove the effects later on. And that's the kind of message that we're actually trying to pass across, that everyone must be able to play their role. If a farmer is spraying tomatoes with dithen M45 or mancozeb just before they harvest the tomatoes arrive in the market with a whitish substance, you go to the market to buy the tomatoes and you buy those same tomatoes, you're actually not helping with the problem. You should not actually buy those tomatoes, because they probably don't even know that's actually not necessary to spray tomatoes with dithen M45 with a fungicide. But because it is common practice in the market that if you spray them, they stay longer, which is not true, everyone does it. And all of us who are consumers still go and buy the same products. But in actual sense, those products actually don't meet the basic minimum standards. And that's why they normally use the low and high. Because in any developed market, they will not actually allow even those products to get into the market for sale. But because of our system here, they actually get there. We have district local government or city councils that are probably are very far off from the markets, or they are very much interested in collecting revenue from the markets other than looking at the safety elements. So we end up not focusing in that area. In terms of proximity, I think you raised a very good point regarding training. If you want to be trained and you're in Hoima, the good thing now is that UNBS has fully functional region offices, and you don't have to actually wait for people from Kampala to come and do the training there. We have region offices in Western Uganda, and Hoima is actually going to have now host the next region office for UNBS because of precisely the oil and gas sector. And we have done that as part of the government support to provide the service, to move the services closer to the people. So we have all these services now in at least the 5 major regions of the country, and you don't have actually to rely on Kampala. The last one which I picked was whether we are standardizing cuisines and different types of preparation of food and everything. The market determines the products that you actually produce. If the people who are going to be in these camps will require that you provide them with chicken without soup, you will most likely provide that, because that is what they actually require. So, but the standard will actually not tell you that you produce it this way. That is precisely about your own process. So the standards don't, we don't standardize menus or cuisines or technology or whichever way you actually produce a product, because it's not possible to actually standardize everything. What we focus on is the fundamentals on how you are producing, processing, preparing, storing, transporting, and ensuring that the food gets safe to the consumer. That's what we focus on. The rest of the preparations are between you, who is producing the food, and the buyer of your food, or the one you're providing the service. And you actually have to be able to actually meet those requirements. So I hope that clarifies on that particular point. Thank you. Okay. Sorry if I missed. I think the colleague from Hoima was kind enough to give us the turnaround time it took to get ISO certified for. Did you say occupational health and safety? And normally, and you rightly indicated that the standards are a little bit related. So what, for example, ISO has done is that the structure of the standards is generally the same in terms of the applicable clauses. So if you already have 14,001 or 18,001, depending on which one you're already applying, probably 18,001, if you transit to 22,002, which is for the catering for your business, there are some things that we actually not repeat because they are already embedded in your own system. Mostly the broad administrative and management issues. You actually don't have to repeat them because you're already applying them. That is the time you gave is normally the shortest turnaround time that you actually have for a system certification. The reason system certification takes a little bit longer is because for you to establish a system and for us to be sure that the system is working, you must be able to test the system. We confirm that the system is actually running before we actually grant you the certification, which is different from the product. Today we'll start producing Sim flour. Next week, I apply for certification. Within a month, I get certified because within the same month, I'm producing the same product. So the product certification is much more easier and shorter than the system because the system is looking at the entire process. And that normally takes a little bit of time. The other thing that takes time with systems is what I talked about earlier, documentation. And depending on the complexity of your process, you will be required to provide a lot of documentation, looking at the critical control points that you have in your system, what do you need to document, and all that takes a little bit of time. But what we have right now is, and what I shared earlier, is that UNBS has developed an approach where if you have taken the initiative, you have support from your management to actually apply a system, we actually we help you to do a self-assessment. What that does is that then you will actually be able to score yourself probably at 60 or 50%, and that will give you the time that you actually get to close the gap which will actually be remaining. It is safer than trying to go in blindly. Otherwise, then you'll be knocked by very many of the requirements, and most of the time it puts many people off because then you need to put this in place, you need to put that in place. Once, if you actually do a self-assessment, it will be shorter for you because you will actually be able to know what exactly you need to close. So that's the correct turnaround time. If you're already applying a system, it will take a shorter time. So the next time you apply for another scope for catering, it will probably take you 4 months or so because they will rely on the already existing system. For a new entrant, it could take between 6 to 12 months, depending on how committed your entity is to be able to actually apply the system. For some, it takes shorter if they are clear, they have been having records, they have been keeping everything as per the standard, and only what they need is just that recognition or that certificate. So those ones will take a little bit of much more less time than those that don't have anything currently within their system. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hakim. I know there are more questions. I encourage you to engage him after the session is done. He's still around. But so we can move swiftly on. As ECOP and with CPP together, we tried to anticipate the discussions that would come from this forum. And one of the things, in addition to standards, that has been said again and again is collaboration. And in an effort to highlight ways of collaborating, we've invited the Association of Ugandan Oil and Gas Suppliers to present to you. So at this juncture, I would invite Mr. Dennis Kamarasi to talk more about the association and possibly how you can all get involved so that you can collaborate better and service this industry.
Good afternoon. My name is Dennis Kamarasi. I'm the Vice Chairperson of the Uganda Oil and Gas Service Providers Association. But I'm also a supplier in the oil and gas, largely in fabrication and integrity testing. So you might be wondering what I'm doing at a catering workshop. Well, I am here representing the association. And before I go into the presentation of the association, I would like us to talk a bit about the journey of supply. I've so far been supplying the Uganda oil and gas industry now for close to 2.5 years. By Ugandan standards, that's experienced. But by international standards from China and some of our colleagues from Nigeria, that's a very short period. But there are lessons that can be learned and we feel we can share, even with the catering component of this project. Now, I was thinking about catering with some of the people here, a lady who I spoke to in the break. So you have a camp of about 400 people. 400 people means 1,200 meals per day. 1,200 meals per day means 8,400 meals per week. So, to be able to supply this, you need, just being able to fry a good omelette is not enough as a caterer. You actually need to be a project manager because you're supplying this number of plates. Imagine the number of plates going in circulation in a day, washing, cleaning, what some of them are breaking. That's logistics. Then you've got supply, people are supplying you with food, tomatoes, onions, eggs, buds, everything. A lot of these things you cannot find in Hoima. So you have to have a supply line that when one truck is coming from Kampala with potatoes, another one is in the way, another one is reaching Hoima. All of these things are moving concurrently. All of these balls are in the air at the same time. If one of the trucks overturns, you have to have a substitute driver to get another truck and start moving because on the field, there's no room for downtime. People have to eat on time and be back on the rig on time. So your inability to supply that becomes a hindrance to the entire project. So to be able to supply and make sure that you're supplying food on time and you have trucks on time, you have to make sure that you have a bank which can give you money when you need that money on time and at a cost which is competitive because you have gotten a contract where you have worked in your profits and you have calculated all your costs. So that means even the price of interest you're paying must be well calculated. You have to have human resource in rotation because if one driver is drunk, he can't enter the car. You need a new driver. So if you're operating from Kampala and people are in Hoima and you have no idea who slept where, who drank what, who was woken up at what time, you see the problem? This is before you serve one single plate. So, ladies and gentlemen and my colleagues, winning the contract is the beginning of problems. It's very easy to put in the paperwork, and remember you're competing with 100 other companies, so you're trying to price each other out. To win the contract, you put in a lower price. When you get into the field, you will age in 1 year. Because unfortunately for you, we are counting every day. Why? Because even on weekends, people eat. So there's no holiday for you. Even on public holidays, even on Christmas, they are eating. So you're working. And you are complaining, oil and gas hasn't given us contracts. You have got it. And you will wish you didn't get it. If you have not planned very, very carefully. So we need to get over the excitement of winning contracts and get thoroughly into the logistics and the numbers concerned with being able to deliver this. And you'll find that you're working within a thin margin. So after the contract, people will expect you to buy a new house and a new car. It might not be the case. So looking at all these, it's important for us as local content and local service providers to be careful, especially when we are looking at some of these contracts, and then to begin to forge partnerships. It's much more advantageous. Now, 400 people, 8,400 meals is just one camp. Multiply by 6. 6 times the problem. If you're in Tilenga, Tilenga is a 4,000-man camp. That's 12,000 meals per day in rotation. You've never done this before. You've probably catered for 100, 200 people on weddings, where everything is clear and straightforward. This is different. The shortest route, and I will talk about it briefly in my presentation, which I'll rush through after this, is to find partnerships. Instead of buying a new refrigerated truck on already thin margins, I'd forgotten. After this, you are waiting for 45 days to receive any money. That is if you have ticked all the boxes. If you haven't ticked all the boxes, you might wait a longer period. So, partnerships with companies that have done this before is crucial because they will already have the infrastructure. It's just a matter of moving infrastructure instead of incurring capex, which you already do not have or which is priced highly. So let us be humble enough to accept what we cannot manage and be willing to learn. So it's very important that we forge strategic partnerships. I'm happy Mr. Ori from Hoima is here because that is actually very local content is on the ground. He can leverage local understanding with international competence. And that tends to be a winning combination. Allow me to just introduce some of our members. We have Kembabazi Catering, Mr. Moses Biarugaba, who is with us, is a member in this catering. And we also have a partner from Nigeria. This is part of the collaboration we talk about. JCI, Ben is from Nigeria. And this is all part of trying to leverage experience to tackle the problem. So, like I said, the association has a membership of slightly over 100 companies. Oh, this is me. Right. So we came together a couple of years back to address the disparity because at that time there were very few Ugandan companies in the oil and gas. So in 2011, 8 members formed and came together to make sure that we have participation. These are some of the founder member companies that started this association. What we were trying to do during the pre-production phase of the oil and gas, which is it was a 9-year period, about 3 billion was spent in this industry. And of that 3 billion, only 23% was retained in country. And that 23% was divided over about 1,000 companies. So the actual retention of capital in country was very small. Where do I point this? Okay. So these are some of the roles of the association. We interface with the regulator. with local enterprise, with multinationals, all in a bid to find solutions that can help us function better. Now, some of these are our strategic objectives. We want to create a catalyst because we understand that the opportunity and the potential of oil and gas in Uganda is not really going to be unlocked by government, because government's share of the contribution of this project goes to the consolidated fund. None of us has control over the consolidated fund and how government spends. But what we have control over is participating. The more Ugandan entities that participate, the more employment opportunities that are created for Ugandans, the more taxes that are paid within the country, but most importantly, the more capital we can retain. Because if we retain more capital in country, that then acts as a stimulus, and that's why I'm calling it a catalyst for growth. So we want to increase participation to at least 70%. Some of our strategic pillars are technical capacity through partnerships, compliance, enabling business environment. Luckily for us, PAU has done their job well. Organizational capacity, readiness to be able to take on jobs. And of course, sectoral and regional market linkages, because we have to look at post-oil and gas. We have to build industry and businesses that can survive after oil and gas, where you have created enough competence that you can take your company to Mozambique, you can take it to Angola, you can take it to West Africa, because you have developed a capacity that's not just local, you can compete on a regional level. These are some of our current members and some of the events that we have performed. So, ladies and gentlemen, that is about the Association of Uganda Oil and Gas Service Providers. We strongly believe that with synergies, with collaboration, with partnerships, strategic partnerships, we can be able to unlock this opportunity for Ugandans and, importantly, make it even cheaper for the operators. Because if we can function efficiently, even the operators are able to perform their project within cost, which is good for all of us. Before I conclude, allow me to thank CPP. CPP has been very receptive. Please, let's clap for these people. We're always in their office. Mattia is about to chase me away, but they indulge us, and they are very open. Thank you. On payments, I'm told suppliers for January were paid in December. It's not the standard, but I think it's a Christmas present, so please, thank you for being committed to local content and keep it up. I thank you all.
Thank you, Dennis, for that presentation. Dennis will also be here in case you want to engage him about participating in the association, and in case you have further questions for him. We're going to move right ahead. Are there any questions at this stage? Hoima Resort. One question. Marianne, do you mind? If we have any pressing questions, we'll take 2 or 3, and then we'll have our closing remarks from PAU, represented by Joseph Nyakairu. Just to let you know, lunch coupons are being taken around. Please don't leave without eating. This is a catering forum, after all.
Thank you, Dennis, for the presentation. Dennis was showing us the members of the Association of Uganda Oil and Gas Suppliers, and which is very good, those who formed it. But they have reached Nigeria and haven't reached Hoima. I'm not very sure how many companies from the real oil source are members of the association. Would wish to be members of the association, because it helps really to get into partnerships and so many things and getting information. But currently, I think the association is Kampala based and it takes 99.9% of the businesses, leaving the companies as the production source of the oil with almost nothing. So maybe we shall find a way whereby the association can help companies in Hoima to join the association. And I would also propose that if it's possible to open a branch office in Hoima, so that the smaller companies in Hoima can reach the association easier than coming to Pan-African House. Is it Pan-African House? Something of the sort in Kampala. In that way, I know with the headquarters of the association here, they could help Hoima companies reach these tier 1 companies more easier than it is now. Of course, we have had challenges there, and I think the association would help. We try to form local associations, but there was a lot of challenges. Some people thought there is a benefit in the association. Association is more of coming together to look for the benefit other than the association benefiting. So we couldn't form easily. But I would really recommend that the association looks into Hoima, Masindi, the production area, and help those companies become members of the association and possibly open a branch office within that sub-region so that the association also helps us. And maybe not to come back again on the table, this goes to CPP. Earlier we were told that 2 camps could be managed by one company. But when we look at it, even 1 camp managing is already very difficult. So out of the 6 camps, why do you want to have 3 companies and not 6 companies? Why don't you have each camp alone so that a contractor or a partnership of 2 contractors run 1 camp and the other camp alone, and up to 6 camps in Uganda? Because if you combine 2 camps, you have already aged out all the Hoima, Masindi-based companies, and maybe Kampala, you have aged some of them out. So maybe that question could be answered by CPP.
CPP, please take a note of that question. We are having the 3rd question.
Yes, thank you. My name is Muteki Jondap, and my question goes to Mr. Dennis. Maybe briefly, I would request you to tell us how we could be members of such an organization. I work with Kamit Energies. We do much of inspection and testings. Thank you.
Let Mr. Dennis first tell us how it was very easy for him to go to Lagos before reaching Hoima. Then we shall have more questions.
Thank you. I anticipated that from Mr. Warrior. I was actually worried. And interestingly enough, I'm even from Hoima. So really, you can see how bad it is. But we have reached out to companies in Hoima. This morning I talked to Mika, to Kabalega Resort, to Kontiki of Dr. Kojo. Unfortunately, I did not have your number. But before I leave today, I'm sure that that is going to be corrected. So I think I will go with your contact. And I will be visiting you personally. Because I've seen a lot of your work and I'm a fan of yours. We also had membership within our association of HODFA, which is the Hoima District Farmers Association. This was a couple of years ago with the Talo was still here that time. You remember? I think you remember TradeLinks, and we were working with them. But then after that, the oil and gas took about 10 years without happening. So at that point, we could then not open an office because we did not really have, everything had been low. But your suggestion has been taken under advisement, and maybe you give us some space in your hotel for an office there so that we can have a liaison. In terms of In terms of joining the association, we have some members here. Ivan and Mole, are you in the room? At the back over there. Those two people who will help whoever needs to join the association. Like they have the requisite forms, and then you can go through. We can take you through the process for joining. But everybody is welcome. We think that we can do this together. So the more, the better. Thank you.
We also have one question for CPP. Mr. Haitao. They are asking, instead of giving 2 camps to one service provider, why don't we allocate every camp one Ugandan company?
Thanks for the question. And for the supplier selection, CPP plans to select at least 3 subcontractors, maybe up to 6, based on the bidder evaluation process. So don't worry about it. Thank you.
Let us take in more questions. There were some hands here.
Thank you. My name is Victoria from Hotel Hollandia, that's in Bukoma Nsimbi. We have already been working with one of your camps at Sembabule, and a subcontractor called Excel. We have been supplying food. We are a very small company, and we are in the rural areas. You have talked about supporting the local community, but when I look at how you have set it up, it doesn't support us, the small people, at all, because we are small, yet we know the community better. Can you find a way to incorporate us the way Hoima Resort said, without us going to Kampala people to look for them so that they give us business and then we work under them? Please consider us. We are still small, we are young, but we can deliver service better than Kampala people. Another issue is about payment. We have, other people have talked about it. Please reconsider. 45 days is too long for us to do this business efficiently. 60, it even goes to 60. Every supplier here is still mumbling about it. It's too long. We can't run efficiently. We can't give you good services if the payment takes that long. Please shorten the payment period for us to be able to deliver services to you efficiently. My other request will go to Mr. Dennis. Please consider Greater Massacre region, because as you can see, I think the 3 camps are in the Greater Massacre region: Sembabule, Chotela, and Mutukula side. So many people would love to join the Service Providers Association, so please maybe even set up a branch for us, not only in Hoima and Kampala, but we are also there. Thank you.
You do want to respond first? Are there more questions? No.
Okay, thank you for your question, and indeed it's a pertinent question. I think the the main message here that we always encourage suppliers when they're attending these forums is to participate at the level that you're able to participate at. This is a huge scope. That's a fact, right? It's a huge scope. And if you're not able to participate as a tier 2 contractor at this stage, there's opportunities. So like I had mentioned when we went over the scope of services available, the tier 2 contractor is also required to subcontract certain services so that they're not doing the whole, self-performing the whole scope on their own. So the tier 2 contractor, once the tier 2 contractors for catering have been identified, they will be tasked to go to the regions and also carry out further engagements to share what opportunities exist within their scope that they're going to be subcontracting out. And that's where we ask you to participate, because we expect these contractors to work also with the local communities. Community content is a key deliverable on this contract. And so we will expect these contractors to work with community providers such as yourselves. And I think that's a level which you can play at. And so that's how we're trying to cascade or spread the pie as far as possible. Yeah. There was a comment for Mr. Dennis on Greater Massacre.
Yes, would be glad to have members from Greater Massacre, maybe. Where's the lady? We shall have a discussion. Yeah.
Okay, thank you for being very patient with us. We're going to conclude now. We're going to invite Mr. Joseph Nyakairu from PAU to give his closing remarks. Issues to do with NSD registration, classification, please see him at the end. But Mr. Joseph, you're welcome.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Maybe I'll first start by introducing myself. I've been introduced before, but maybe I'll just do it again for those who have not heard. My name is Joseph Nyakairu. I'm the Senior National Content Officer in charge of capacity building at the Petroleum Authority of Uganda. This includes both enterprise development and skills development. So enterprise development looks at building capacity of the enterprises to take advantage of the opportunities in the sector, and skills development looks at individuals and building their capacity to be employed within the sector. Part of the initiatives like this Supplier development workshops are part of enterprise development initiatives, and so it's a pleasure to be here. Also, just to add, I'm here representing our Executive Director as well as our Director of Economic and National Content Monitoring. First of all, I'd like to just mention that during this critical stage of development in the sector, where a lot of works are ongoing and contracts and activities, a lot of camps are going to be built in the project area, some of which have already been built. And they'll need to be supplied with food, like was shared with the previous presenter, kitchen utensils, catering services, etc. So it brings a lot of opportunities to the companies in this room that have been invited for this workshop. As was also mentioned earlier, actually my role just now to close is basically to reiterate what the previous presenters have said, so it makes my life a bit easy. To also reiterate and emphasize another point, joint ventures. I would encourage joint ventures and collaborations between the relevant companies present in this room and also outside who may not have been invited, who have not maybe participated in this workshop. A case in point was a lady who had asked a question earlier about maybe if she has the capacity to supply 500 people and maybe the scope of works requires you to supply 1,000 people. So maybe you could partner with another person who could supply the other 500, who has capacity to supply another 500, and together you can supply the 1,000 people. So we encourage this sort of joint ventures because together it builds your capacity and helps you to participate in these opportunities. It's also important that potential suppliers understand fully the standards required, as was presented by UNBS earlier. Some of these things are very sensitive, including food storage, food handling, food processing. As was mentioned earlier, you can imagine in a camp of about 5,000 people, if there's one case or 2 cases of food poisoning, it's highly likely that the majority will also get contaminated. So a lot of these camp management companies or catering companies are requested to be very careful with the standards that they are that they take part in, and with the standards that they require from their service providers. Also, just to give you comfort, these services or these sort of contracts are ring-fenced for Ugandan companies. I'm sure most of you already knew that. So you have priority in participating in these contracts. Community content is also very key, and it's happy to see the gentleman from Hoima in this room. We encourage the contractor as much as possible to work with the companies within the communities and give them as much of the services and opportunities available that you possibly can. As Dennis said from August earlier, the association is one of the platforms you can use to seek some of these collaborations and efforts. And also on the NSD, you can go on the NSD and look for companies that are within your space and reach out to them and see how you can participate together with potential partners to take advantage of these opportunities. Last but not least, I'd like to thank CPP and ECOP for organizing this forum and their participants and companies for taking part in this engagement. I would also encourage you as companies to be proactive and look out for these opportunities, either in the media or on the websites of CPP or ECOP or the Petroleum Authority or on the NSD. We do post these opportunities on these various platforms, and we encourage you to be proactive to go out and look for them. With that being said, I thank you all, and yeah, maybe last but not least, you need to be on the NSD. So please, if you're not, I encourage you to quickly start registration and the process of getting on the NSD. Otherwise, you'll not be able to take part in these opportunities. Thank you.
Thank you, Joseph. I think you've all heard. We thank you for coming. I hope this has provided you with enough information to participate in the upcoming opportunities, like we said. Is on ground floor, Paradise Hotel. That's where lunch is being served. Thank you. Sorry, we forgot one important thing. We just want to take a quick group photo. So if you can just make your way to the stage very quickly, and then you can head over to lunch, please.